All right.
Pretty memorable. I just tell my wife to guess what I would bring today.
She'll see.
We'll start now.
First of all, the cover memo that you received on the discussion item for tonight, the review of the town center, there's a 2-page memo. You only received the first page. You found that out today. So it sounded like the report stopped suddenly.
Oh, there's more here.
Yeah, they're front and back.
Front and back.
Okay.
One of the board's goals for the year was to conduct a review of the town center visioning that
Pass those down.
Got it. Okay, they both have.
that previous boards had put together starting in early 2007, concluding in very early 2008, but recognizing that 4 of the 7 current board members weren't a part of that process, or at least not at the board level. Thought it was important that we go ahead and have the discussion about what the board's thought processes were, how we got to where we are, and ultimately culminating in the adoption of the plan that's up on the screen and a lot of additional detail which we shared with you over the weekend. The design guidelines, the development parameters, and the like. What we've done is lay out what the process was that the board went through at the time, identifying, first of all, the 160 acres that are in question. There was some discussion about expanding that area, and there's one reference in the development parameters that talks about the desirability of including the property that sits south and east of that 160 acres. It's referred to as the Anderson property. It's where Coal Creek Extension would ultimately make the connection from Rock Creek into this area. And there was also some discussion throughout this process of incorporating the properties over fronting on McCaslin, Awida, Weinstein, and the like. But for the discussion purposes, the 160 acres predominantly in green there was the area that was studied. It also is the same 160 acres that the board has included in the expanded SURA, or Superior Urban Renewal Authority boundaries. So that's the property that was in question. The process. We went through an engagement, selected a nationally known urban planning firm, happens to have an office in Denver and in Boulder, Van Meter, Pollock, Williams and Pollock. The board met with this group at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, in its informal workshop sessions, looked at land uses, economics, engineering data, traffic data, all sorts of input mechanisms to come up. Did a lot of charrettes to come up with this both land use and layout design. And I'm summarizing, again, 9 months of discussion into just a couple of minutes. It culminated in the work program that's off to the right. That's a little bit difficult to see here, at least with my poor eyesight. With 160 acres, roughly 1 million square feet of commercial use, no more than 2,000 residential units, up to 2,300 residential units if there was a senior housing component, roughly a minimum of 40% of open space, very green initiatives that would be included, including, I believe, was a LEED Silver, if I remember correctly, on all construction to take place within the 160 acres. After the board came up with this particular plan, in fact, you'll notice it's referred to as Alternative A, there was a group that showed up, predominantly living on Carville, who said, at the night that the board was to adopt this, roughly in September or October of 2007, where the hell did this come from? How come nobody told us? And how come it violates all of the underlying zoning? The zoning is supposed to be low-rise office use in that southern portion closest to Rock Creek. That's why we bought there. That's what we want to see. We don't want to see houses back there. Bring in office. So Van Meter went back and came up with some more schematics to show what it would look like. Two-story office with a bunch of surface parking, and they came back and said with a couple of descriptors were roughly 40% more traffic, 25% more stormwater runoff, and much likely to ever get built from an economic perspective. The board went back and said we prefer Alternative A, and despite some of the opposition from the audience, that was the plan that was developed. That was the process that we went through to come up with the town center as we know it today. And for those of you that were sitting here through those many, many meetings with Van Meter and his engineers and his architectural staff, please feel free to add anything that I may have glossed over. But
Yeah, the one thing that I want to impress to the other trustees that were not here, I think Van Meter's an exceptional mind in the way he takes our comments and creates a vision and puts it on paper. I was very impressed with him. Whether we agree with the final, design, that's a whole separate matter. But I think I would like to see him come back actually if we proceed.
Scott, which one's Main Street?
Which actually gets one to just highlight the various sections.
the subzones.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things that we came up with when we embarked upon the process, in fact, I was relatively new to the community, and as I met individually with the board members, I said, what do you want to see happen across the street? And almost to a person, everybody said they wanted to see the entire 160 acres be Main Street, low rise, one story, maybe two story, first floor retail, maybe some ancillary uses above. That's how I think the entire group of the board went into this discussion process. Walking out with 1 million square feet, 2,000 housing units, 12-story buildings along the corridor and the like. That was a part of the educational process I think the entire board went through to recognize the synergies of that land use, the fact that you needed certain densities and mixture of uses in order to support the whole thing. That it wouldn't be economically viable, as an example, to anticipate that whole area was going to get built in 1 and 2 story retail and maybe some modest office above. That's the town center. And when I think the parameters talk about a 10-block frontage, there's 2, there's 2, there's 2, there's 2. But that's the crossroads of what was envisioned to be the town center. Low rise, 2 and 3 story, first floor retail, second, maybe third story office or residential above. Limited on-street, limited both in terms of numbers and in terms of allowed time. Limited on-street parking here, the vast majority of the parking structure here, parking structure here, parking structure here, to support the mixture of uses throughout the entire development area. Once you got outside this, the Main Street area, you started to see greater densities. You went to up to 5-story and some residential uses in this area. You have some big box, you have a hotel conference center, some high-rise development along the corridor. This was an office use, anticipated office use, up to 12 stories. Part of the process with Van Meter again showed that those large, high buildings actually served as a sound buffer from US 36.
Scott, at the very top of the screen on the left, is that white building, is that all Chicago right there, next to it right there?
That's Superior Liquor in Old Chicago.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Superior Plaza. That's our lovely Breaks Plus.
And where's the ice rink?
So
In this plan, the ice rink is currently right in here, because this would be the extension of Marshall. Right now it turns in towards Superior Liquor, so it currently sits in here. According to this plan, that was actually envisioned to be the ice rink. 2 sheets of ice wrapped by other uses, office and retail, so that it was an interior use surrounded by almost not a fake facade, but an alternative use facade. And again, with all of its parking in an adjoining multi-deck structure over here. High-density residential throughout here, apartments, condos, and lofts. And then as it transitions back towards the existing community and existing Rock Creek, a lower density, lower rise, 2-story, single-family attached, and even some single-family small lot right in here. With the transition being resident to resident, single-family residential to multifamily residential to the more intense commercial area in here.
And that road at the very bottom above the word center, is that Coal Creek?
This is the extension of Coal Creek, and one of the things that's listed both in the map and in the development parameters. And the development parameters which we attached were actually adopted about 2 months after this plan. Talks about having a minimum of 2 entrances into the town center from the south. The anticipation of the extension of Coal Creek. Right now, Coal Creek is roughly 60 feet wide, 4 lanes. When it dead ends down in here, This is intended to be a two-lane meandering, so a calmer traffic movement than what the current configuration of Coal Creek is at its terminus. The second one is this frontage road that comes off
88.
through the Anderson property and connects to 88. With or without an interchange at 88, that's considered to be an incredibly important ingress-egress point. If not, this is intended to be the connection point for those that live in Rock Creek. You don't have to go out onto McCaslin to access the town center. You shouldn't have to. You shouldn't want to. But for anybody else coming into it, McCaslin or 88 are your entrance points.
Does 88 go through residential, or is it just
No, it
frontage?
wouldn't. You would
This is
bypass
the
it.
Anderson parcel right in here, that 22 acres of undeveloped. Rock Creek actually comes down here. That 22 acres is undeveloped property right now.
But the access from 88, it wouldn't go through residential units, is what? No, not at all.
This entire frontage road comes in on the Anderson property. This connection of Coal Creek from its existing terminus here into the town center here cuts across the Anderson property. And all of our discussions with Anderson and every subsequent developer that has expressed some interest are, we need this right of way, and we want this right of way for those road connections to be built.
So you would veer off 88th close to the bridge right now?
Right where the curb cut is right now. There's a curb cut at the bottom of the bridge.
Right.
It would be a hairpin turn, almost 180 degrees
Right.
to get in there.
Right.
So it would probably have to be reconfigured somehow. But yes, right at that location is where you'd enter in on this frontage road.
And then where would you enter the town center, I guess? You keep going straight
This one called for it to come up here.
and then cut across. Okay, so
Yeah.
behind the homes, basically.
Yeah. This
Okay.
plan, this was the senior housing facility. There are parks, ball diamonds, all sorts of, this was envisioned to be an amphitheater, some sort of a community structure. Obviously, this is waterfront with the creek meandering through, whether it's sidewalk cafes, but low-rise retail, taking advantage of both the park-like atmosphere, a pedestrian bridge here. The major road connection is the extension of Marshall right in through here. And it's crossing the creek at its narrowest point, so the bridge span is the smallest. We've maintained the integrity of this with the property that we've recently purchased for the ice rink. We have, the road would come down maybe 100 feet further to the south, but it would still make the same connection at the creek.
Tell us about your challenges in trying to market this to potential developers.
It goes back to some of the genesis. Why did we even do it? Again, I was new to the community, but one of the things I first heard was that the town had had at least a half dozen false starts. People that had come in, put the property under option, invested a lot of time and money, come forward with plans that for whatever reason died. Unrealistic plans that were not financeable, plans that would never see the light of day and never get approval from the town board. There was a variety of reasons, but every one of them died. So the board's premise was, instead of waiting for that perfect plan to come in, why don't we take the exercise and say, this is what we would accept? That has helped a lot. It's minimized the interest in it, but at the same time, anybody that comes forward and knows these are the development parameters, that's what they're willing to accept. If you come in with anything more, it's described as dead on arrival. I'll go back to one of the first developers we had after the adoption of this plan. It was called a group called the Martin Group out of Santa Monica, California. Very experienced, very well heeled, and very interested. They had all the property under option. After they got it under option, they starting to push the envelope. We can't make it work without 3,500 units. Don't even ask. It'll die. They withdrew. It was about Thanksgiving of 2008 for two reasons. Credit markets were starting to tighten, and their property owners were not willing to give them extensions on the existing options that they had. So the land package was going to start falling apart. Thereafter, you had a group out of Boulder that had all of it under option, a group called the Channon Group. They've done some small-scale commercial and mixed-use development in Boulder. They were had it under option, and it evaporated within 90 days. And then most recently, you've heard about the discussions of the Explore Sphere Group, which is the more of an athletic themed development that purportedly has all the property, including Weinstein, including Ouida, and including the Anderson property, under option. Those options are valid through the end of this month, roughly September 24th. It meets most of the standards that the board had developed. Less residential, I think they're talking between 1,000 and 1,500 residential units, roughly 500,000 square feet of retail space, another 500,000 of mixed, more like office space. Much more open space, closer to 60%, because of the huge amount of space devoted to their athletic fields. 16 soccer fields, 24 volleyball, all of that kind of stuff. Most of it out of doors. Indoor rec facility with 4 sheets of ice, which would obviously mean that Boulder Valley probably wouldn't be building their own facility. They'd probably be a tenant if that were to come to fruition. Again, those are the positives of it. The negatives, that they're showing us lists of retailers that are no longer in business. I've used the example of the SPN zone. There are only 2 SPN zones operating in the country, and they're both at Disney World. Disneyland and Disney World. So they're no longer a prospect to put a facility in here. So they have there's some shaky foundation in their entire plan as well. But that's who currently has the land under option.
Will they be coming before us at some point this year?
Explore, the old developer, was originally scheduled to come before you, I want to say on August 9th. Sphere, the landowner, and the money people in the development plan, called shortly thereafter and said, we want to delay it a little bit. We're trying to lock up Anderson, and we don't want any of the existing property owners to all of a sudden back out. So we want to buy the land first. That was the last we heard. And that trigger is supposed to be September 24th. I would expect that if there's any merit in their plan, any interest on their part to proceed, that they will be coming in with a plan. We have told everybody, and Sandy, back to your original question, we've told everybody, we don't expect anybody to build this plan, that street network, those exact uses in those particular locations. The board was more interested in seeing that mixture. However, the private market felt it would best lay out. And there's been interest. And the nice thing is that there's interest from people who have the capacity to do that kind of thing. It is the worst time to be taking it to market.
Right.
Another one of the impediments, we were attempting to find developers that were experienced and well-heeled enough to do the whole plan. 160 acres at that price, you're talking about $30 million. And everybody's assumption is probably at least 10 years to absorb it all through phased development. There aren't many people, even the most well-heeled that we all know and have had conversations with, aren't willing to make that kind of an investment over that period of time to buy it all. So since then, we've been talking to components, a hotel developer, people that are experienced in the Main Street type of development, people that have the appetite to do the office development, and others that have an interest to do the residential development, effectively joint venturing. Master plan it, but recognizing that other, multiple firms could come in and do sections of it.
To what extent does ConocoPhillips change the equation?
They don't change the equation. They help the financial, the prospect of this happening, and mostly because of the residential. Conversations we've had with ConocoPhillips, the prototypical employee that will be coming onto their campus does not currently work for Conoco. 24 years old with a master's degree, a laptop, a backpack, and maybe a skateboard or a bicycle. Those aren't the people that work in Bartlesville today. Those are the kinds of employees that they anticipate to be recruiting to come to Boulder, Colorado. They're not in the market for the single-family type housing stock that exists in Louisville and Superior. And Louisville has said there will be absolutely no new housing anywhere in Louisville to accommodate the Conoco employment base. None. So Conoco's excited at the prospect of not only the close proximity of this, but the product offering. Apartment, condo, and loft in close proximity. The two existing pedestrian underpasses under 36 to get to their campus through the hospital. They're our biggest proponents, but I don't envision them driving this at all.
I have a question. Sports complex or something like this are two very different things. Have we always allowed the the developer to come to us with an identity for our town, or if we created our own identity and gone to the developer and said, this is what we want to be?
We have, since the development of this, the adoption of this in January, and then the further refinement of it in March with the development parameters, we have aggressively marketed this to developers that have the appetite for it. Not the strip center developers or the big box, not the Centros and those of the world, but people that have experience in large-scale, hundreds of acres of mixed-use development. I would use an example, and not to be name-dropping, but Forest City, which is the developer of the Stapleton project. They have a huge appetite for this, and they've had a lot of success throughout the country in doing those kinds of developments. The lack of interest in this particular site is they're so heavily invested in Stapleton and would view this as a natural competitor to it. So they haven't picked it up.
Is an identity like this, is it like upscale dining, upscale retail, or what is?
All of
sports
you.
is easy to identify. You're the soccer complex of this area. But what is like this? What would that be considered?
It's the demographic, and that's what sells us. When we're at the shopping center convention, we're selling that 92% of the adults in Superior have college educations. The average household income is off the charts at $150,000 per household. Those are numbers that are almost unrivaled. The fact that it's supported under a SURA, the fact that it's easily packageable, the fact that there are only 3 property owners for the entire 160 acres and they're all anxious to sell, those are the things that we market. And that we're going to expect that what they build is going to be comparable in its architecture, who it attracts.
Okay.
I would say that, so this was an exercise for a couple of things. One, to identify what could, if someone says, oh yeah, I'm going to Superior, what does that mean to somebody? And so that, we were trying to identify what the downtown area would look like, and this isn't really downtown, but a central core area. So that was one of the parameters. The other one was, what is the minimum number of residential units that we could get away with to help the development actually move forward? Residential is always much easier to sell than the commercial aspect, so that was part of this process as well. And then to understand where the connections would have to be, because there's some, there's going to be difficult parts. I think the commercial, I don't think will really ruffle a lot of feathers, but the connections into the neighborhoods, the connection onto the chasm will be hard, and the residential is going to be, difficult for the community to understand. So we had seen proposals that were basically all residential. They were townhome developments and big, quadrants down where the commercial area is down there, and we said, that's not something that interests us at all. So I would say that that's some of the things that help stimulate why we went through this process.
And to follow up on your question, I thought that Scott described it well. We've gotten developer-driven proposals that weren't at all what we were looking for, but we didn't have a clear picture to present of what we were looking for our identity. And that's what this whole exercise was about.
Okay.
And also, I think one of the goals for me, and I think others also, was to make a good transition between sort of Rock Creek and original town as well. Make sure that the two neighborhoods become more connected.
So given the economic meltdown and the problematic economic horizon, how relevant does everybody who was involved in this planning process, how relevant is this still? In your opinion, does it need to be reviewed? Does it need to be made, more current?
From my perspective, I don't think any change needs to occur, because the only thing we know is that this, as Scott said, one thing I'm sure about this project is this will never be built.
Mm-hmm.
This is just sort of designing the parameters of what could be built, and then the developer would come forward with, this is what I propose.
Yeah, I agree
So-
with the mayor.
And from my point of view, while it'd be great to have this developed, I'm not in a twitch, as my grandmother would say, to get it developed tomorrow. If it turns out that it takes a couple of years before someone's really interested in it, while some people may view that as a negative, I think I'm happy to have us stage the age of our town. And to have everything built within the same decade or nearly that, to me, is worrisome. Then the whole thing starts to age at the same time. I'd rather have different generations actually of parts of town, so I don't have a problem if it takes a little while. I think getting the right thing developed is more important than getting something fast. So,
Do we miss the boat at all once ConocoPhillips starts moving in?
that's a good point.
I don't think so at all.
They're not.
Without disclosing too much, I mean, as an example, there are going to be some Conoco suppliers and affiliates that will want to be in close proximity. Some within the shadow of the mothership, possibly within the fence on the campus, and others in close enough proximity but not under the thumb, if you will. That might make an excellent pool of candidates for a substantial office complex here. So I don't think we miss out. We do have some competition that's happened on 96th Street with the rash of a couple of hotels that have been proposed, one that's already operating, and some of the multifamily. Candidly, you get what you pay for, and it's pretty cheap construction. They've had some problems with their construction already. I don't think that's the kind of quality and character that we're talking about building in here. But there's competition. There have been hundreds of rental units that have gone up on the doorstep of Conoco in anticipation of all of those employees coming in. If you're at the bottom end of the food chain and you're looking for a $550 a month unit, we welcome you to live in Broomfield. If you're looking for a little classier, we'd love to have you in our town center. So no, I don't think we've missed anything.
I guess my only other comment, it is important, so I agree with Lisa that we don't have to, we're not driven that we have to do this right now. Fortunately, I think our finances are in good shape. Many communities are based upon use taxes. We don't really need that. So we've really positioned ourselves to be in a position of strength, realistically, through our budgeting. But eventually, we will need the commercial and retail there because we're so dependent upon, as the budget committee was well aware, so dependent on a few retailers to generate a huge percentage of our income. It works great for us right now, but that's not a sustainable situation to be in because, we all know that those retailers maybe won't go dark, but they'll start to underperform. Who knows what happens with the internet? And being purely dependent on a few retailers is just not sustainable in the long run. So we do need this project to move forward, but I agree that we don't have to do it tomorrow.
That was clearly the board's mantra in 2008, was we'd rather wait for the right one than just take whatever, even if it met those development parameters. We wanted to make sure that they were well enough heeled, that they had the background in making this kind of community, building that kind of a community. So we've been selective in who we've approached about it. The other thing that's changed, I think everybody had the anticipation when this plan was being prepared that it would be a master planned development and that it would be done by one developer. That was not an outrageous expectation in 2007. It has been almost since the date it was approved. Therefore, that's why we've been talking to hotel developers, office developers, high-quality residential developers, and retail developers about doing some joint ventures. That's the one thing, probably the most significant thing that has changed.
And I could see us doing a master plan and then allowing subdivision of it so people could do their little section of it, as opposed to one developer doing the whole kit and caboodle.
So just a little more explanation on land ownership. It's privately owned by the 3 individuals now. What happens if, for example, the current group who's interested acquires the land, but their plan is not accepted as appropriate?
If they were to acquire the property, actually from the town's perspective, that would be a good thing. Because instead of dealing with 3 people, you're only dealing with 1. Price probably escalates, though we have seen the price go down. Some of the options, since I've been in town for 3.5 years, the options were offering up to $3.72 a square foot, about $175,000 an acre for the property. And people were offering to buy it at that. Nobody pulled the trigger on it, but they were signing options at that level. We bought the ice rink at $2.25, and and that seems to be the new benchmark, because property owners are now talking in the low to mid 2 per square foot, 80 to 100,000 an acre, instead of the 175. So it makes it easier for someone to come in and assemble. I think that would be a good thing if they triggered it. And you also have an astute property owner. Right now, we have long-standing family interests that may not be the most astute business people. That 80 acres is owned by a two-person partnership, and then a 40-acre down here and a 40-acre over here. And you've heard the names: the Elemenkick, Spicer family, and Shuck. Those are roughly the three families. The Elemenkick, roughly 80 acres, 40 acres for Spicer, and 40 acres for Shuck.
I have one other question. I always forget where the line is of this property that we share with Louisville.
Roughly the old rail line, right in there. The north 80 was the property that was de-annexed from Louisville and Superior, and on which we have a revenue sharing agreement with the city of Louisville. The original intergovernmental agreement even went so far as to say what kind of land uses could go on there. Sandy, one of the developers that had come in and proposed some residential in here, and we had an intergovernmental agreement that said we couldn't allow residential there. That IGA has since been amended, but we do still have the revenue sharing provisions. It's the North 80.
Now, take me to sort of the transit issue. You know, Dr. Cog sort of has educated us that along the same lines as what you said, where multifamily housing is sort of now the rage among the new generation of employees, closeness to transit, so RTD and whatnot. How do you see that all playing into this?
There are some references in the development parameters. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the mass transit in this area predates this planning process. You already have a large investment with the pedestrian bridge and the park and ride facilities on the other side of McCaslin. There is no rail anywhere in this proximity. It's going circuitously up Westminster, Longmont, back down into Louisville, and then Boulder in 2017 or 2018. So the only thing we have in terms of mass transit, there's been some discussion about bus connection, maybe even trolley service from this intense development over the existing
RTA?
BRT, bus rapid transit facilities that exist, both parking and park and ride and bus lots that sit over here, but no movement of those facilities to this side of McCaslin. Those investments were too new, and they function properly, rather than try to go back. And in a perfect world, rail between Denver and Boulder should have gone right down the middle of 36.
Yes, it should have.
Shortest point between shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and that's the straight line. That's where it should have been. But the decision got made by others that, like I said, it would go up to Longmont, Louisville, and the like.
So I guess for people that haven't seen this before, I personally don't think that we need to do a whole big new visioning process, but the question is, are the newer board members comfortable with this in understanding
Concept.
this concept, because it's going to be, if it came in this iteration, it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of happy people. I think more happy people than not, but you usually don't have the happy people come to the meetings. So, not usually.
I'd be interested at some point in asking Van Meter, Williams Pollock, who apparently, they're experts in this, to maybe invite them back and see what they think about it. Is it, are they seeing changes in the market? What are developers considering? What are roadblocks? What are, that kind of thing. So
It was 2007, so, having them refresh it sometime wouldn't be unreasonable.
I think that makes sense. I just wouldn't want them to try to say, and this is how you need to change it to get it to develop right now in the trough of an economic thing, that's probably not the property we'd be interested in developing. So
Right.
I'd want
And
them to think
I-
about it as a more normal economy.
Yeah, and I think that that's how they perceive things. They're not developers themselves, they're, I think, more land planners, I know, so. Okay. Well, once,
I think everybody would enjoy that. They would enjoy coming back.
Yeah.
There was an incredible investment on their part.
And we were so fun.
a lot of brain
Scott, have you been back in touch with them over time to let them know how developers were responding to this?
Frequently. Again, they brought an entire set of sub-consultants, engineers, traffic engineers, and the like. So there have been developer questions about how the creek would work and stormwater capacities and those. So we've called on both Van Meter and some of their sub-consultants to help us in that regard. Some of the people that have put the property under option have actually engaged Van Meter for their planning process, and I've encouraged both of us. That's fine. We have a great comfort level with Van Meter, but don't think that that's going to get your plan approved any easier just because we see a familiar face in the audience. I think the board's going to be more astute and falling for that one. But yes, we've had a number of discussions with them. And they've made a number of referrals to us, people that they're familiar with in the development community, to say, you should look at this parcel. This is one of the last grand parcels in the 36 corridor. And the town has its act together. So,
all right, well, why don't you be more formally in touch with them and just see what
certainly will.
what they would recommend. Anything else about this particular issue?
One other that I didn't share, the board did at one of its retreats reviewed an economic pro forma of what happens if that gets developed. And we haven't dusted it off in quite some time. But the numbers were staggering. I mean, it was $200 million in town revenues. It was $700 million to $1 billion to build it. But that might be beneficial for those of you that didn't see it, and even those that have seen it some time ago.
Yeah.
Dust that off again, because they talked about implications on school, county, other taxing bodies, and the like. So we'll pull that together and distribute it as well.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. That's the only part I have not seen involving this.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
I mean, the other really strong financial incentive for this is that I think we pay off all our debt in the utilities
In the water
with
stuff,
this
yeah.
one.
That was the night.
Roughly, the number, and it was just in the finance budget report, I believe the system development fees for this were roughly $60 million. If you remember, we owe about $28 million. So the premise was, we pay off all of our water and sewer debt and all of the general fund money that goes to subsidize that debt currently. And we establish a wonderful nest egg to replace our utility infrastructure when it's needed with the development of that.
Yeah.
So,
All right, thanks. Want to go over the agenda items?
a short agenda at the next meeting. I don't know why I fell prey to this, but now I can't read anything about this. 3 action items at the next meeting that are anticipated. Agenda item C is the second, and two of them are follow-up items from tonight. Second reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 3. This has to do with the Resolute Metro District. Chapter 3 pertains to special districts, and this specifically codifies that 5th exemption that we granted them a couple weeks ago when we approved their service plan. There will also be a public hearing and second reading on the model traffic code, which is on your agenda tonight for first reading. If there are any questions about that when it comes up later this evening, there are virtually no substantive changes, and anything that might even be considered substantive, the board has already dealt with. Things like neighborhood electrical vehicles, the recodification for things like no texting and no cell phones under the age of 18. We've already codified those into ours, but those are the most significant kinds of things in the model traffic code. The other action item, agenda item E, is the bids for trail improvements. This is the new trail that will be wrapping around the key equipment building from the intersection of McCaslin and Rock Creek Parkway to the new Boulder County trail that's going from Original Town down to Colton. So this is our trail connection. I believe we have $200,000 budgeted. I'm believing our estimate right now is about $140,000, and we'll have firm bids for you in 2 weeks.
Okay. I don't see anything else necessarily on the
Weekly digest.
weekly digest, unless you want anything in there.
Couple of items for those, and Lisa in particular. I know you had difficulty, especially probably with the squawk box, but we thought, from a staff perspective, that we had a constructive meeting last Tuesday night, and look forward to next Monday's meeting. Assuming that we can complete the board's review, we anticipate submitting the ordinances that are necessary for first reading on October 11th, and all of the budget approvals on October 25th. We have set aside time 2 weeks from tonight during the workshop session, as has been the Finance Committee of the whole practice. Some items that they thought were either too controversial or wanted input from everybody, we list them as budgetary items of interest. Candidly, there are issues that the Finance Committee has chosen to punt to the full board for input, and we'll have a short list of those for discussion 2 weeks from tonight.
Next meeting.
You've received the update on various construction, including Colton Trailhead, Indiana, Original Town, and Blackfoot in Sagamore. You received a lengthy report on the Hodgson Harris Reservoir meeting of a week and a half ago. I'll be sharing more information this week. We have received the proposal letter from Boulder County Parks and Open Space, and it is it's offering a little less than they did in the meeting, and was somewhat disturbed by it, but share that with you later this week. There is a commitment on their part to be restoring some degree of water. We walked out of this meeting a week and a half ago, and everybody had the expectation it was going to be 37 or 38 acre feet and roughly 10 feet deep. Now it's looking like immediately it'll be 3 to 5 feet deep, much less than 38 acre feet, and we'll get to 10 feet deep and 38 acre feet within 12 to 18 months. So we were a little disappointed by the backpedaling. But
Is that because they're running out of the irrigation season?
no, it has to do with their problems with the state and the state dam inspector, and the level of improvements they are going to be required to do before they put the first drop of water in.
Okay.
At least that's what they're claiming.
Can we ask questions about?
By all means.
Okay. So how fast are they going to get the 3 to 5 feet in? Will it make this season?
They promised us at the meeting that they would have it in before the end of September. And the creek, the community ditch from which the water originates from, will be running through the end of this month.
That's
They don't have it by.
yeah.
If they don't have it by September, we'd have to be filling it from other sources. And we've offered some support or assistance in doing that if necessary. But if they can get their act together with the state inspectors, they should be able to continue to use their water rights through the ditch to get some water in there quickly. And we just hope that there's
Just
no
3 to 5 feet.
3 to 5 feet.
And do they have estimates or any kind of estimate on the dam repair?
They do, and they shared that with us, and I think I shared it with you. A full-blown dam replacement was upwards of $1.1 million.
Does that 1.1 million include water rights?
No.
To fill the reservoir?
No, that was additional.
It's in addition to the 1.1?
Right, structural. We were talking about structural issues,
Okay.
structural numbers.
So they're not
Low-
including water rights
No.
in this?
Low estimate for a modest repair, which would allow it to the below state jurisdiction, below 10 feet in depth, was roughly $140,000. The 8 to 10-year-old estimate was roughly $100,000. That's now escalated to roughly $140,000 in current dollars. And the roughly $800,000 to repair the full dam has escalated to about 1.1. And they don't have engineering plans or anything for that, but they did go back to the original engineers that had prepared those plans back in the early 2000s, and those were the revised numbers that they'd received.
And did they discuss creating a management plan for this reservoir at all?
Yes. They know they've been deficient in not having done that. Candidly, they've been deficient in not giving us one on the Bear Hay property as well. Yes, it needs to be done. We didn't get any commitment at the meeting or since on when that might take place. And it did seem, from everybody's perspective, it was more important to restore the habitat as best we could
Yeah.
within a reasonable period of time before it either migrates elsewhere or gets lost.
After a full dam repair of 1.1 million, what does it entail with the water rights? Is that even further costs, or is that already secured?
They have water rights through the creek. And I think I shared that the dam at its peak performance could store up to 117 acre-feet. They've not been coming close to producing that much water through the ditch. And they've been living in the last almost decade with 40 to 50 acre-feet. So while people were saying the benchmark is 117, we're saying you've lived there and everything you've observed have been closer to 40 to 50, and we're trying to bring it back to 34. The variance is fairly small. 34 to 117, it's like it's never going to be what it was. It hasn't been 117 for years and years. And in order to maintain a 117 acre-foot reservoir, they need to acquire some water rights from somewhere other than Community Ditch. Community Ditch couldn't supply 117.
But at a lower amount, they already have secured the water rights?
Yes.
Okay.
It has been performing at 40 to 50 and would easily be able to maintain a 34 acre-foot.
And is there a time period? Does it expire with these water rights?
No, actually, and that's one of the reasons why the Boulder County doesn't want to let this go. I think I shared that at the end of the day, this is not, there is an economic factor. And the water rights that reservoir service and the water that they get through the community ditch goes to serve a 92 to 94 acre agricultural operation, that which the county generates $20,000 a year. Pretty difficult to justify $1 million maintenance expense for something that supports a $20,000 annual revenue stream. So I don't expect, one, that they're going to be rebuilding the dam, and I certainly don't think they're going to be buying more water rights in order to support a 92 acre contractual ag operation.
So
Well,
what happens? I'm sorry. What happens to those water rights over a period of time? Do they go somewhere else,
They continue.
reappropriated?
If they don't use them, they can be reappropriated by other shareholders of the community ditch. That's the county does not want to lose them because they are very senior. They apparently date back to the 1800s, and therefore very valuable. They don't want to lose what they have, but I don't anticipate that they're going to be embellishing. I don't think they're going to be buying more shares trying to get access to more water, because at the end of the day, it's only used to support that commercial ag operation.
But you don't have a time frame of the actual expiration date of those shares?
They never expire.
They never expire?
Right.
All right.
It seems weird to me that the county, with its green history, would be doing a cost-benefit analysis that only looks at those farming things and not at the wildlife and recreational and environmental type benefits of a property like that. So that seems bizarre that they would count those as zero in a cost-benefit analysis.
We're not doing the study for them, and I wouldn't say that
No,
they're
no,
diminishing it. I'm just saying that when they laid all of this out, I think they were paving the way to say it's not realistic for it to expect this kind of an investment to maintain this kind of a revenue stream. I think they're sensitive to the ecological impacts, the fauna, fowl, water, all of that stuff, even the aesthetic. There was great sympathy.
There aren't a lot of bodies of water around here, so. I'm sure you have better data. I know that the residents in the area think that it's 60 acre-feet since '95, so not 50, but
This was
yeah.
what we heard from Ron Stewart and his staff.
Okay. Well, I'm going to look at this as a glass is half full, or perhaps the reservoir is half full, or something. That because my impression of what was going to happen initially is that they were going to just completely get rid of it, tear down the dam, or breach the dam, and never hold any water in there. So I think that through resident participation and the board, I think that we're at least making some progress there.
We shared the letter with the County Board of Commissioners and Mr. Stewart. I have not gotten any feedback from that, but I was pleased with the responsiveness of Boulder County Parks and Open Space and how quickly they agreed to meet, who they brought into the meeting, and how they promised us a letter within that week. We got it middle part of the following week, but they've not been sweeping this under the rug.
Great.
So do we know what next steps are going to occur?
Based on the letter we received, and this was you're not going to see 10 feet, you're going to see 3 to 5 feet, you're going to see that within 30 to 60 days. 60 days doesn't get us to when the community ditch is still running. So we're pushing it, within 30 days before the end of the month so that we can still access that particular water source for that particular locale. While we have access to provide them with other water from other sources if need be, and I'm sure we'd be willing to do that. Their preference was they wanted to take their water rights and fill it. So it's less than 30. It's not 30 to 60. 10 feet of water within 9 to 12 months is what their letter was indicating.
And then management plan?
There was no discussion of that.
No discussion of a time frame on that?
We were pushing them on their where we do have an economic interest.
Okay. Why don't we take a couple-minute break, and then we can start the regular meeting. Regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for September 13, 2010, and Phyllis, if you'd call the roll.
Sure. Mayor Muffle,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elia Gagoras.
Here.
Trustees Joe Cervelli, Chris Hansen.
Here.
Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Lisa Skumatz.
Here.
Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Scott Randall.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Lois Hardy here.
Okay, very good. That brings us to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Trustee Williams.
I want to pull D and G.
Okay. So that was items D and G that were on the consent agenda, and they will follow the consent
D
agenda
and
then.
G?
Any other changes?
I'd like to pull E for discussion.
E?
E.
Okay. So those 3 to follow the consent agenda. If there's no other changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with those changes. Trustee Skumatz, seconded by Trustee Hansen. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 4, reports, questions, and issues. Trustee Hansen, would you like to start?
Sure. Attended a Rocky Flat Stewardship Council meeting today. I really wish that we would meet more often because there's so much information there. It's just hard to absorb in just a couple of meetings that are spread out. But we were informed today, I guess the group works on a triennial basis. Every 3 years they review what they've done and if they're going to continue on for another 3 years. Do I have that correct?
Yep.
So evidently, the group has received a $180,000 award that coincides with a grant extension that takes us into the next triennial review, which is next year. So that was pretty big. Now, one of the things that's going to come up is Superior is going to be asked, well, actually every community that is involved with the Stewardship Council is going to be asked if we want to continue our relationship there. I'm assuming that we do, but we'll discuss that at a future date. And then I also spoke with David Abelson, who is the executive director, and on occasion he will go to communities, to the board of trustees or the city council members and present what's going on with Rocky Flats. And I wanted to see if the board would be interested in having him come during a work session and maybe present 10 or 15 minutes on brief history, what's going on currently, and what the future plans are for the area.
I think that would be a great idea.
Okay, good. And then the last thing that I have is our community forum on sustainable solutions Superiors tomorrow night. Getting nervous, but we expect to have a pretty good turnout, so hopefully everybody will be there.
Looks like a great event. Trustee Skumatz.
I think the highlights, I'm sure many attended the Chili Fest. It seemed like it went really well. It went much better than last year's weather, I guess. And it seemed like we had a nice steady stream of people, and we didn't run out of chili early, which was really awful in the past. So thanks, and I thought it went really well, and congrats to the winners. I wondered if we have any latest on the bike race. Maybe not. I'm just asking.
The deadlines for proposals was Friday, and the town of Superior submitted a proposal to keep our hat in the ring. It was a very non-committal proposal. It was touting the attributes that we bring, including experience of having conducted professional cycling races, a supportive community, and the premier venue anywhere in the state, which is the Hill, McCaslin, and it's ours. That's what we offered.
Thanks.
We expect to hear back from the people that Quiznos has hired. It's called Medalist Sports out of Atlanta. And I got a response from them late Friday night, and we expect to be talking to them within the next week, so I'll keep you apprised.
Thanks. And I think the only other thing that I had that was any note was that several of the Trustee Pennington and I, and with other input from other folks, have been working on trying to figure out how does the board come to a process that we're comfortable with for not just the things that show up in Chapter 16 of the Land Use Code, but for other projects that arise. And how do we, are we going to go to public hearing, or, what comes first, what comes second? And we've crafted a draft document that we'd love to have input from the rest of the board in. I did bring a copy, I can pass it around. But I think that maybe the best solution for us to take forward is to maybe have a work session around something like that. And if the board doesn't, if there are other people on the board who'd be interested in doing that, so that we could not end up in a boat where we feel like we're not clear what the process is for something, as per the recent examples we've had, it would be great to, I think a work session would be a perfect situation to try to work that out in. It's a board, it's sort of a, what does the board want to see happen for various projects? I think this process tries to make that, tries to really make that clear, and talks about, choices about outreach and all the rest of that sort of thing. So I would really like, if other board members would like to see that on a work session, I'd love to hear about that.
Can you simply make a motion? And
I'd like to move that we
second
add a work session that addresses that process.
that? Second.
So I guess we can vote on it, or
And we can schedule it.
but we don't really necessarily need to, so we can schedule it sometime. We have a pretty packed agenda here, coming up with budget hearings and finishing out Chapter 16, so I'm not sure exactly when that will transpire, but
Well, it said we had a light agenda next week. Can't we put it, or next meeting, can't we?
if you want to do it during the regular meeting, I suppose we could do that.
I'm happy to do it during the regular meeting as well, I don't care.
Okay.
Either way would work.
So why don't, I'm trying to envision how that would necessarily work. Why don't, I guess, maybe the two of you would present something during that meeting? Okay. Could either be under our reports, or we could schedule some additional time, whatever. Anything else?
No.
Okay, let's see. I wanted to echo how well received the Chili Fest was. Had the opportunity to spend some time down there, and I think that both the Chamber of Commerce and town staff did yeoman's work, and it really worked out great, and had really positive comments from the people that I talked to. So congratulations to all involved.
And it was lively from beginning to end,
Yep.
3 to 7.
Had a meeting with U.S. 36 mayors and commissioners. It really talked about the rail issue, which doesn't pertain to us. It's part of the fast tax proposal, so I won't bore you with that. There was some discussion about when and if RTD might go to the ballot for additional monies to accelerate the fast tracks plan, but I don't think that anybody's come to any particular decision one way or the other about it. And then the only other thing is that I think that we'll have a couple of empty committee slots, if I understand how this is all being juggled. I believe there's somebody who's leaving ProStack, if I understand that correctly. So we need to talk about an appointment to ProStack, and potentially that might open a spot in OSAC. So we just need to figure out if the board wants to do what we've done in the past, is just post notification for everybody for applications, or if we want to take from the people that have applied in the past. So I don't know if people have a feeling about that one way or the other. Trustee Pennington.
I believe we've started a process of publicly posting it, trying to get as many apps as we can, and I suggest a continuation of that process.
Okay. So anybody feel opposed to that?
I just had a question. Did we have enough candidates from the past reign? I think we did not, right? So I think it makes sense to re-advertise.
For ProStack, I think we did.
You had 6 applicants for 2 vacancies on ProStack, but you also have 2 new vacancies on our CAC.
So
One
why
of
don't
which we, I think, agreed to fill, potentially, recommend a filling.
why don't we start with ProStack and then advertise for that? And how long would the board like to post that for? 4 to 6 weeks, or 2 to 4 weeks?
No more than 4.
Yeah.
Okay, it
2
has
weeks
to
might
get
be
into the next
2 weeks might be.
newsletter.
I say 2 weeks.
So,
Okay.
how about 2 weeks after the next newsletter, since we need to, I mean, we can put it on the
And-
CAC, and we can put it on television, but some people would only see it also in the newsletter, so I would recommend waiting for a couple of weeks after, whenever that
Suggest e-blast as well.
so.
And I'd also recommend that the people who didn't get appointed, that did apply last time, they get called. They get
Yes.
called, or a special email to them.
Yep, I agree. All right. That's all I have. Trustee Williams.
Well, I as well went to the Chili Fest, and it was a great time, and I appreciate all the great things that staff did. Definitely a monumental effort on their part, and it was packed from beginning to end, and it went lickety-split, so fast, so it was a great time. I attended today Colorado Open Space Alliance Conference, and it's for the next couple more days. So probably the next meeting, I will bring forward some of the things I learned. Looking forward to doing that. And there is no Dr. Cog meeting this month, so I'm off for a month.
Very good. Trustee Gregorus.
Yes, trustees Pennington and Williams and I attended the Safety and Transportation Committee meeting up at El Dorado K through 8 today. There were several parents there. Jim was there as well. We had the new principal of El Dorado K through 8, who I think is very eager to find a lasting solution to the safety of the children, especially around morning hours and when they get picked up in the afternoon. It's been problematic, especially Indiana and Mount Sopris. We've looked at this before, and I think with Kurt's help, we're planning on, he took all the information, he's going to give us some suggestions, going to have everybody read them and reconvene next month rather than waiting for two. Typically what has happened is we meet, we talk, nothing gets done. The kids are still in jeopardy for another year, so I think I'm finally seeing some light at the end of this tunnel that we'll have a final solution up there. So we will be meeting again in the end of October to hopefully make a proposal to you two as a general board after we meet.
And I can say I've had the opportunity to now do crossing guard at El Dorado K-8 since I have a sixth grader, and I think anybody interested in doing crossing guard at El Dorado K-8, I'm sure they're more than welcome. It's a good time, and you get to talk to a lot of kids. So that's my little plug. Thank you.
We still need more crossing
Yes.
guards.
On the other hand, we have better crossing guards in a program. I forget the lady's name who volunteers 5 days a week.
Karen Munch.
No, Karen is a superstar, actually, but I think it's much better than it has been traditionally up there. So typically, Superior Elementary had done a much better job over the years, and now El Dorado K-8 is doing a better job, but they need additional help. And we have to find some creative solutions to kind of eliminate this potential very hazardous and hopefully not, we don't want to have any kids getting hit by cars and then do something about it, so hopefully we can be more proactive about that. And Trustee Pennington, you can add.
No need to add. Quite thorough. Ditto on the Chili Fest to everybody. Needed the firemen there to put some of that heat out, I have to tell you, on some of those samples. I would actually like to once again bring up what I think is the continuing inadequacy of our minutes. I think Phyllis does a great job, but particularly, again, last meeting, Post-Act Chairman Payne made a lengthy presentation, and none of it's reflected in the minutes. And I don't believe that should continue. As an attempt to find a solution to that, what I'd like to offer the board, I participated in a presentation at CML from a staffer for Littleton who has integrated the written minutes with the video. They're actually keyed one to the other. It really minimizes the need for transcription and just links you immediately. Click on it, you're to that point in the video queue. And I would offer to invite that gentleman here to a work session for the board to have the same presentation I received at CML, or staff, or both. But I would really like to see this board moved to minutes that are fully reflective of what has happened at the meeting.
So I forget which community it was, but I've seen the video minutes in some community, and it's actually kind of interesting. So, you know, we can either have somebody from like Waterangle or whatever come up, or we could have somebody research that with a company who may do that. Just understand how that works.
He uses a particular piece of software that he is very keen on, and I did ask him at CML if he made himself available to other communities, and it's simply just cross-educational efforts CML is great at, and he offered his services. I do think now's the time to review that and try to make it happen.
Do you know what the cost is?
No, I don't.
My only other question would be, what constitutes legal minutes versus what constitutes user-friendly minutes? And I think we maybe
Right.
want both, but
Right.
we need to have the legal
Right.
minutes too.
I assume so does the city of Littleton, so I assume this covers both bases. But we can certainly use this as a starting point. But I would contend our minutes may not be legal the way they are if we're leaving out critical material pieces of the
So-
meeting.
With
You
that, I
need to
have
respond to that,
I have to
because
have the
that's so
attorney.
far-fetched and off
yeah,
base.
I have just a legal opinion if I could. Are minutes legal?
Yes.
Okay. So just for the record, I need to make sure that that's reflected.
The minutes are intended to reflect the actions of the board, not the discussions, not the intentions, the actions of the board. Now, you can go much further than that, but the town's minutes reflect the board's actions. If you want them to include the discussions, we can go to transcriptions. If you want to go to video minutes, we can go to video minutes. All of those come with costs. The board has made the decision that they wanted to go with legal minutes that will withstand the test of time.
Yeah. And I would say that I've also had the opportunity to read minutes from other municipalities, and ours go into much more detail than most municipalities. So,
And that's where I was going to head. User-friendly minutes are a great thing, and maybe that's something we want to add. I actually think we have to, in some ways, for legal minutes, I thought we had way more than is recommended.
You do.
So that's the only, I mean, for legal minutes compared to
Right.
informative minutes.
I'm happy,
Notes.
I'm actually quite happy to hear that, but I am interested in minutes that are a historical record, so that when people want to go back in time to get an accurate historical record of what actually transpired at a meeting, that the minutes serve that purpose. So that's my motivation with minutes. And but I do believe I was extremely impressed with how this cross of written and video worked for all parties, and would suggest we take a look at it.
so this is my only other comment is that we're in the middle of budget season. I'm sure that comes with a price tag. We need to have some preliminary number of what that is if we're interested in exploring that in 2011. So
I will make that call tomorrow and see what it costs the city of Littleton to implement, and get those numbers to you.
if they have a vendor that they use for that, which I'm sure they must use a vendor with the software for that, also maybe the name of that group. So,
Is the cost per meeting? Or is
yeah,
it-
that's, I don't think we'll be able to
I will,
hash that out now, so we'll
I
just-
will
we
get
need to
what
get some.
information's
Yeah.
available. Thank
All right,
you.
thanks. Anything else? Mr. Randall?
Would remind you that we did go to web streaming, so they are cataloged for somebody that wants to see what happened and listen to what happened. But
It's just a way of bookmarking the meeting.
no, I was going to go into the letter, but Trustee Skumatz beat me to it in terms of our letter to host the 2011 Mortal Bismarck.
Great, thanks. Ms. Carberry?
I don't have anything, thank you.
All right, very good, thank you. That brings us to item number 5, and this is public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items. And just in case anybody's interested in the consent agenda items, D, E, and G will follow that. So with that, I'll entertain any public comment. Name and address, if you wouldn't mind, at the mic.
Yes, you
Sure,
can go.
yep, come on. You can form a line if there's a lot.
English Hopkins, 1661 Egret Way. So I'm obviously here about the reservoir. Good evening. And I just wanted to give you guys an update on what's happened since we last spoke. We've been really busy with, meeting with lots of people, and the residents have really made it clear that they're not going to rest until the reservoir is restored to some degree. We'd love full capacity, but we had what seemed to be a productive meeting with Ron Stewart, his staff, Town of Superior staff, Robert Momartz, the Saddlebrook president, and myself. At the end of the meeting, Ron stated that he would send us a letter by the end of that week stating that the reservoir would have 10 vertical feet of water this fall. That was, I think, over about 2 weeks ago. And on Friday, I received an emailed draft of that letter stating that they would, this fall, create a 2 to 5 foot pond at the west end of the reservoir for the winter. And then 9 to 12 months from now, they would create 10 vertical feet of water, which is not what he implied at the meeting or what he has implied with meetings with the commissioners. So we're very uncomfortable with the direction that this is moving. We've also attended Boulder County Parks and Open Space Advisory Committee meetings, Town of Superior OSAC meetings, Town of Superior ProStac meetings, and the commissioners' meetings. All the entities have been supportive of our efforts and have indicated this through one action or another. On Saturday, we rented a booth at the Chili Fest, and Superior residents were really supportive, and many of them were shocked and disappointed because they thought the reservoir was initially drained because of drought reasons or something along those lines. They didn't realize it was a permanent measure. And they expressed this support with 90 signatures on a petition for us. So we're moving forward with communicating with Superior residents, particularly the Lakeview community came up, and many of those homeowners were really upset because they thought it was temporary. Ben Perlman, at one of the commissioners' public hearing meetings, directed Boulder County staff to work with staff in the Town of Superior. And so, speaking on behalf of the Saddlebrook community, as their on-site manager and as a resident of the town, we are asking you all to make a commitment tonight to direct your staff, the staff that's here to support the Town of Superior residents, to work with Boulder County staff to seek the short-term solution this fall of 10 vertical feet of water in the reservoir and a long-term solution of full capacity within the next year.
Okay. Let's see, we had a conversation about this just a few minutes, I guess, before this meeting started. So, Mr. Randall, why don't you summarize where we are with this for those that might not have heard your discussion previously?
Very, very similar representation from that meeting. Was held a week ago Tuesday. We were told we'd have a correspondence by the end of the week. It came the end of the following week. It did not convey what we'd been told at the meeting, though it did lay out an action plan. It talked about 3 to 5 feet of water within 30 to 60 days. At the meeting, we were told 10 feet of water within 30 days before the end of September, at which time the community ditch probably wouldn't be running. And then a longer time frame for a subsequent improvement, getting it up to 10 feet within 9 to 12 months. And again, we were told up to 10 feet very, very quickly. So I think we all share that disappointment and that change. Because we just received it late on Friday, I have no idea what the motivation or what the cause of that change was from Boulder County. We'll do what the board wishes, but obviously you recognize that we have little in this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just wanted the summary. I mean, at the end of the day, the Town of Superior doesn't own this. We can't compel Boulder County to do anything in particular. We have good working relationships with them. I congratulate staff with continuing to work with them, but at the end of the day, it's actually not even Mr. Stewart from the Parks Department. It's actually going to be the commissioners who have the power of the purse string. They'll be the people that will be spending the money on this, so they have to commit to doing that. So that's my impression. Trustee Gregorus and then Trustee Scobie.
Can we find out why they changed, what transpired, and can we put whatever pressure we can politically with Ben Perlman to say, you know what, we were promised 10 feet, we were promised this year, not 9 to 18 months from now. And that the residents really are pretty united in Superior, and we're pretty outraged that this is, it's taking place. I know legally we can't do anything, but vocally we certainly can. And we do have a good relationship with him, so.
We do,
We
and
can
we
have commission meetings.
So,
We can pack commission meetings.
trustees'
Yeah.
comments?
And I think what she's asking for, one thing is to ask us to make sure that we dedicate the staff time to attend and maybe promote or provoke meetings with Boulder County to keep it moving forward. And I have no discomfort doing that at all, far from it, so.
I guess what I'd recommend to the board also, just in the meantime, so we've sent an official letter to the commissioners regarding this particular issue and what we would like to see. Feel free to call all your friends at the commissioner's office and express your personal opinion about that, and I'm sure the squeaky wheel frequently gets the grease, so that might be something that people would want to pursue.
Maybe they still feel bad about letting that transmission stuff be on our open space.
Maybe. Trustee Grace.
Well, and historically, we as a board have met with the commissioners once a year, right? Do we know when
Make it
that's
soon.
coming up?
No.
Let's make it
I asked
soon.
I have a monthly managers meeting that Ben attends as well, and I'd asked his staff if there was any intention of doing that. They said, yes, we wanted to do it, but we haven't scheduled any of them for this year.
Because that would be a great time to have,
Let's send him a date.
yeah,
Yeah.
have that discussion
we?
one-on-one, live and in person, kind of informal with food, a little wine, you never know. It's just,
Very good. All right, thank you.
not that I drink wine, but I'm just saying.
Yes, Trustee Williams.
And I would like to add one more bullet point to your requests and ask that they bring a management plan or start to work on a management plan through POST, which is Parks.
POSAC.
POSAC, yeah, there we go. And get that going forward with the reservoir. So
Yeah, we would
that's-
love a management plan, definitely. So I just want to make sure I understand everything clearly. So what you all just said is that, yes, you're going to support your staff in moving forward with Boulder County staff to move forward on this project?
I think our staff has been very engaged in this process, but at the end of the day, it's really the county that has to step up to the plate. They own the water shares, they own the dam, they own the land, and they're the ones that are going to be spending money on it, so.
Right.
But I think it's in our interest to have staff attend.
Yeah, and then
Attend and
But we
I'm
did
sure
say
I'm sure they will
meetings.
continue to do those.
And I just wanted to, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to ask, the commissioners meet in a similar form like we do, I assume, on a monthly basis, or no? Or-
They meet daily during the daytime,
They have public hearings.
yeah.
So that would be, the people you brought in here last time, would you
Yeah.
pack this place? I think
It's probably,
your
Yeah.
best bet is to bring everybody, if you can coordinate that, to a meeting of theirs, and yes.
yeah.
Well, I like Trustee Skumat's idea of just finding out when we can get on their agenda to have them here.
They
all
schedule,
three county
they
commissioners.
schedule, whatever they call it, city days or county, I think they call it county days, actually, and they actually schedule that with all the municipalities.
My concern with that is that may be past the end
I'm
of
sure it'll be
September,
well-
past October, could
it's
be
gonna be
later on
well
this year,
past
next
that.
year. So although that's a great meeting to have to discuss all sorts of issues we have, I think in this case, this is more of an emergency, I would say.
at least the
As-
first part's an emergency.
Yes.
There's a longer term
Right,
that's not an
right.
emergency that we want.
The
to
long range stuff we can discuss with them, but for right now,
Stage one.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern because they had said 10 vertical feet and now it's significantly less. And
I
I mean,
think-
that'll support the wetlands, which seems to be their objective, but
Yep.
there's more to that.
I think having as many residents attend their meetings
that's the key.
would be probably the most productive.
Yeah, and I think your support too is very productive.
And if you find out when those meetings are, please email me.
Okay, I
So
will.
I can try to go.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Additional public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items?
Joyce Welch, 1807 Reliance Circle. I'm sure it is no surprise to any of you that I'm here to discuss Community Park East project. As I made very clear in my email to all of you after the August 23rd meeting, I am extremely concerned by the approval of money for materials for a piece of a park when the park project has not been officially approved. I have a few points I would like to make on the subject. One, at the August 23rd meeting, Mr. Randall stated you had already approved the park project at a previous work session. First, projects cannot be approved at work sessions. Second, at July 12th meeting, several trustees asked whether or not accepting the GOCO grant was an approval of the project or an obligation to build the park. Mr. Randall clearly stated that was neither the case. I do not understand how materials can be approved for a project that has not been approved. The exchange between the board and the town manager during the August 23rd meeting was unacceptable. When you have residents asking one another if staff always speaks to the board in such a manner, you have a problem. Exchanges like that have an effect on the relationship between the residents and the entire town staff. Also, if you believe such exchanges are limited to the board, you are severely mistaken. I would like to know how you are going to ensure members of the town staff treat the board and the residents with respect. Lastly, if you had prior knowledge that the director of Prost, having already ordered materials for the disc golf course, and you voted in favor of the contract, I'm asking you to resign. You have shown that you are not able to display integrity when managing the taxpayers' money. If you do not resign, you need to explain to the residents of this town how you plan to bring integrity back to the process.
Okay, thank you. Is there additional public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items?
Hi, Susan Bauer, 1770 Morrison Court. I wanted to follow up to some of the comments that English Hopkins had made. In the draft proposal from Ron Stewart, the interim agreement, which is completely unsatisfactory, just to clarify everyone's thinking, includes taking a bulldozer, driving it across the reservoir, scooping up a bunch of dirt, and packing it around the wetlands, which extends about 50 yards from 88th. So you'll have tracks across the bowl, and you'll have a big berm that will hold about 3 feet of water, vertical feet of water. So we had a work session last night, and so that's unacceptable because of just the aesthetics, and it's not what we're seeking. We were told, I attended the last commissioners meeting, and Ben Perlman told me on record that they have directed their staff to work with us to seek a short-term and a long-term solution, and the short-term include 10 vertical feet. And also in this draft proposal that Ron Stewart sent, there was no mention of a management plan. It was, the short-term plan was 10 vertical feet and then see what comes thereafter. And so we found that very disappointing, that there wasn't a commitment to this open space asset that they have on their inventory. So I appreciate hearing that there is support here and that you've directed your staff to work with Boulder County, because that's what we need to know. We're all in this together. It was very interesting at the Chili Festival to hear children telling their parents that, hey, Mom, there's no animals left in the reservoir anymore. So children are in tune to the fact that the habitat is gone. That took me by surprise, because I'm not a parent and I don't have much esteem for children, so sorry. But when they can pay attention to that, and then they got on my horizon, and I was impressed. They exceeded my expectations. But so it's not a Saddlebrook problem. It's a Superior, Louisville, it's a Boulder County problem, because you have land in your inventory that touches that reservoir, and there's been discussions in the past by OSAC, I believe, or PROSTAC, I can't remember which acronym, to develop a boardwalk around there. So we're all stakeholders in the outcome of what happens here, short-term and long-term. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items? What's
Yes.
that?
Come.
Yep.
My name is Ben Bennett, 810 Spruce Street, Louisville, and Oceanside, California. My wife was going to speak this evening, but she's not well, so I'm speaking on her behalf. She's the owner of this property adjacent to the parking lot, which is 122 Cold Creek Drive, and 202 Maple Street. If you recall, she was not successful in persuading you to give her the tap fees for putting the move-on house that we have on 202 Maple Street on that property. Probably rightfully so, but we now, if you've observed the activity, we are preparing that lot now to move that house onto the replatted lot that we're adjacent to. That address is 104 South First Street. So the replat was just approved and is ready to be finalized. And we have everything set up with the mover and the construction people to get that house moved over and set up. So the only issue we want to speak to you about is really the tap fees again. We were declined on moving the tap fees before, but this is an altogether different situation. And what we're attempting to do is use the tap fees that have never been used on that property and are stubbed in on the right-of-way portion of the side of the lot to be able to use that. As I say, that's 30 years of sitting there not being used. The time that we spent and the cost would make a big difference for us to be able to use those tap fees. I had a meeting with Matt Magley and Jay Wolforth several weeks ago, almost a month, maybe more, and talked about an alternative plan of connecting that move-on house to that old house in order to save that house. It didn't make sense to us to do it, and we abandoned that idea. I had another conversation with Matt after that, and Matt told me that it was unlikely that we would be approved for those tap fees. Again, Louise and I met, both Mr. Randall and Mr. Magley, a few days ago and talked about it again. And they again said that they would not approve the use of those tap fees. The reason being that we're splitting a lot, creating a new address, 122 Cold Creek to a new address of 104 South First Street. And because of that, if I understand Mr. Randall correctly, that would be against the ordinance to be able to use, it's a difference of the address rather than the difference of the property. It's been on the property available all these years, but now that we've done the lot split, then that suddenly creates a different scenario. And it seemed to me to be a little bit arbitrary in that regard. If not, I would like to see the language in the ordinance that says that is just verboten. Anyway, the main thing that we wanted to do is bring this up before the schedule board and talk about it. Mr. Randall told me that would be unwise, so he gave me fair notice on that in that regard. But it's a difference of $27,000 at this point, which is kind of important to us. So if we could have the opportunity to present this information in more detail, that maybe that would persuade the decision to give us the benefit of the tap fees. Anyway, the technical situation of the addresses versus the using the lot, which is now split, is the issue. The other part of this whole picture is that we've attempted to try to do this, to move the house on finally. This has been a long, drawn-out process, and I think everybody is a little bit weary of it. We are especially. We're very close to getting this done, so we're pleased about that. But in regards to the old house, it's been unlived in, unused for 50 years. But at the same time, it seems to me a viable structure. It could be saved, it could be used, and fit in with the old Superior, and keep the integrity of that style and time. And it seems like towns and around Boulder try to keep these old houses rather than crush them and replace them. We're prepared to crush the house. If that has to be done, we will do that. But we would prefer not to. My wife was born there, and if it's possible to save that, and we have the agreement in support of the town to do that, then that would be our preference. We are also under a lawsuit by the town that has to do with moving that house. And we're just being given 30 days at a time abeyance on that lawsuit, that if it doesn't go through, well, then we'll be brought to court regarding that. So anyway, the thing that we would like to have you consider tonight is whether we would be able to come to the schedule and put on the schedule to go into this in more detail. And that's my comment.
So what I'll recommend is, there's a couple things. So anything that's a legal action, we won't be making any comment about that this evening. That if you're interested in, so not to get too technical here, we're talking about the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, so we're not in that capacity this evening. That's the water district. Sounds weird, but we're all part of that district as well. Mm-hmm. We will have a meeting as part of the budget cycle, so that anybody could come to that meeting as to express an opinion. My personal recommendation to you, since nobody's going to be able to make any commitment one way or the other, for, against, and this evening, is to actually draft a letter. Mr. Randall works for us in the capacity, and I don't know what the exact title is, but director or something of Metropolitan District Number 1. If you have the opportunity, if you don't agree with his recommendation, to send a letter to the Board of Directors of Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, and I think that's probably the best, that would be my recommendation, is the best approach. So, Trustee Gregorius.
Very quick question. Mr. Bennett, when are you planning on moving the house?
We've got the mover scheduled. We're submitting for our permit in the morning, and we submitted the document that Mr. Magri needed to finalize the lot split. So we're ready to go. We're the mover can pull the house off that lot, which we need to do, and I have the excavator ready to come in at our call, and the foundation people. So we're very close to doing that.
Like within a month or less than that?
Weeks, really.
Okay.
Mr. Randall?
Obviously, you've dealt with this for months. The house in transit that's been sitting at 2nd and Maple for
2 years.
At least, yeah. And the lawsuit that was referenced is a code violation that's before the municipal court, and the prosecutor has been delaying 30 days at a time the hearing on that code violation. So there's no suit, but there's a citation pending. The board has dealt with, first of all, you referenced the SMD1 rules, and while you are not acting as SMD1 tonight, you acted on this request, the board acted on this request at its first meeting in March. The difference there was taking the taps from 122 Coal Creek and moving them to 2nd and Maple, and the board said no. The issue here is moving them from 122 Coal Creek around the corner to 104 South First. The distance is different, but nothing else is. The common ownership and all of the rest is the same. And it's very similar to a case that the board dealt with, or the board of directors for SMD1 dealt with in 2006 on South Williams, or on Williams. 107, 109, I believe, was the address. And I've received this from staff. I wasn't here at the time. But the issue was one of the lots had a water tap, one of the lots had a sewer tap. There was a new house going up, traversing the two lots, and they wanted to be able to take one from one and one from the other and use them to serve it. And the board at the time said no. Our rules don't allow it. The rule specifically says, no system development fee paid on behalf of one property or any portion thereof may be transferred to any other property. Those are the policies, and it's not just ours. That are consistent throughout the region. SDFs are used for new construction to support their tapping into the utilities. So that's the precedent. You've done it. You've wrestled with it as recently as March, and then within the last 5 years. You've handled it consistently that way. That's the communication we've conveyed. Now, in an effort to show that we're trying to accommodate this, obviously we delayed the prosecution on the code violation, the unsafe structure that exists over there. We expedited the two-lot subdivision that we approved administratively and then called the Special Plan Commission meeting last Tuesday to get their concurrence with it. We even approved the foundation permit, which allows for the excavation and the pouring of the foundation. But our building codes prohibit the issuance of a building permit, so the house can't come over and it can't get placed on that foundation until the SDF issue gets resolved.
Okay. Trustee Williams?
So when you have one lot and you subdivide it into two, and you've already in that one lot paid your system development fees, who decides where those system development fees go to the two lots?
As I understand the rules, Mr. Nillis knows them better than I. He's drafted most of them. It goes with the address. And the address on which the system development fees have been assigned is 122 Coal Creek. 122 Coal Creek continues to exist, therefore continues to have access to the SDFs. The new lot that has been created has the address on Maple.
Okay. I think my recommendation still stands. We defer greatly to the director of the Metropolitan District, and if you disagree with him, then I guess I'd recommend talking. Once again, it's a little odd because we're not sitting in the Metropolitan District this evening, but to draft a letter for us for our review. Trustee Pennington.
So to clarify, because we are not sitting here in the SMD1 capacity, we can't make a motion
Correct.
to allow this to be heard.
Right. We didn't open that meeting.
Okay. Can we open that
We didn't
meeting?
post it.
No, it's not.
Because it's not posted.
Okay, thanks for letting me speak.
Yep. Thank you very much. Additional public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items?
George Cutler, 109 South Forest. Mayor, I disagree with you.
Okay.
The town of Superior is a separate town, is not involved in your Superior Metropolitan District, although you are on that board, which is a conflict of interest as far as I'm concerned. We're talking about a woman that paid her tap fees in 1982, and I was the one that approached her for the sewer tap, and she paid this $500 at that time. The town didn't pay it. She could have had that put anywhere on her lot she wanted, which you're talking a lot, 50 foot wide and 140 foot deep, which the lady has two lots, and all they want to do is separate their lots so they can get their house. And I don't know why you keep giving them so much trouble, financially, headaches all the way around.
Okay.
I'm really disgusted. Metropolitan District didn't have nothing to do with the water. The town of Superior did. We are serviced by the district, but the town paid for its own water lines to install in this town. I see no objection for a person running a water line that's to their property on the same street from here to that desk. On the water is about 12, well, the water's about 14 feet or something like that, and the sewer is 10 feet to the south of it, which is a lot less to run sewer into their lot. Give them their water and sewer taps. They paid for them.
Okay, all right.
And we got to revisit this getting on the town board. I was always under the assumption that if you wanted to come for the board and not the consent agenda, you asked that gentleman over there to do it, and he rejected me prior to this or before. He's rejected other people of presenting themselves to the regular board. You got to come before the consent agenda item, which means you don't have to give no answers whatsoever. And I can't see you representing this whole board when I elect every one of you and vote for every one of you. I've brought this up before. That's wrong. Somebody made this little list out, and we go by this list. That's wrong, period. We got to do some thinking here, you know? That gentleman sit there and come Mayor Pro Tem, and he said, I want to bring Superior, the original town, Sagamore, Rock Creek all together. There's no way of doing this when you keep fighting people for their rights. It's wrong. And you're trying to write a letter, send it to the Superior Metropolitan District, you're right there, every one of you.
Okay.
And that man should have been allowed to come to this board and talk to us instead of on a consent agenda. We got to address these problems. There's more problems than that. We got to. You get me started, Mayor. We got a street over here built in 2004, and they excluded it from finishing the original town of Superior on repaving. You could lose Gladys's Volkswagen in a couple of these holes up here. You don't drive it. You don't know. Between 1st and 2nd Avenue, 2 deep holes that would be repaired back. Up the street, drive it, people. Find out what we got stuck with. Really. It's wrong. Went to the south end of the town. We got an alley down there a year and a half because we can't get you board members to get this gentleman to say, fix the alley. Let's do our repair work down there we need done. The cracks in the concrete. You're not doing your job. You're coming here and saying, I'm here, raising your hand. I'm serious.
Okay.
I seriously want to meet with you, and at your convenience, when you tell me you're a doctor, and I hate to bother you, I really do. But, sir, I've lived here.
As I always say, I'm in the phone book, so just give me a phone call.
I'm serious. This man should have been allowed to speak to this board and not just a consent agenda item.
Okay.
We got to, and I was always in the impression that's how you did it. You spoke to the man over here, and he would put you on the consent agenda, not tell you can't get on it, and then you tell him go to another board. That's wrong.
Okay.
This town of Superior board should make these decisions here, not the Superior Metropolitan District. I'm telling you.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Williams?
When does the SMD1 board meet again?
Whenever you have an action item that requires SMD1 approval.
I think the next one is the budget.
The lookout, look ahead?
No. I mean, if you had the Liquor Commission, if you had SMD1, SMD2, SMD3, any action items that were pertaining to any of those groups, you'd see it on the front of your agenda.
And once again, I think the next time that we'll be having a meeting is when we're doing budgets, because the SMD district has to approve that budget.
And that would be October.
First part of October is my best guess.
Am I understanding correctly, however, that if Mr. Bennett does draft that letter and it becomes an action item, that would then invoke a decision whether or not to meet to deal with that action item?
Not necessarily.
If the board, if it goes
If the
out
board
and
wanted
we...
to do that, then the board could
Correct.
meet. But the letter itself doesn't invoke
Right.
anything.
The letter is sent.
The first step.
We agree that it has merit to be considered by SMD1, and therefore we ask for a meeting.
We could hold a meeting.
Which is exactly how the March activity took place.
Okay.
There was a letter to the board. The board said we're interested in conducting a public discussion of this. At the next meeting, it was scheduled. That public discussion took place, and the decision got made.
Okay. So additional public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items?
name is Rochelle Rittmaster. I'm a 10 years resident of Sagamore. I'd like to express my, first of all, condolences to Mr. Bennett and all the efforts they have been making in good faith with this town. And I think that the fact that they have been put through the mill over and over for something, I don't know if you guys have bothered to take even 5 minutes to go look at what we're talking about just yards from here. We are talking about a simple physical diversion that allows a long paid-for tap to be diverted to the viable property that they wish to use, given a new address or not. This is part of a large property. If you want to play games or nitpick about, oh, they shouldn't have subdivided it yet, we could have, this has been their property for years, and for years they could have already sent that over to the south part of the property. But because now they have come before you to get the subdivision, you're now saying, oh, no, now you can't divert it that 10, 12, 15 feet. This is disgusting. This needs to be taken care of. These people have been working with you guys in good faith, and you too, Mr. Randall, and this has got to stop. The way people get treated, it's taken us 10 years to take care of a safety issue in my neighborhood. So those of us who are not in Rock Creek, I'm sorry, we do have a chip on our shoulder because we have to beg and whine and go over and over the most simple things to get the most basic things taken care of and to treat people like human beings. You should be treating the Bennetts like human beings. You should be giving them the minor diversion they are asking for. I'm as fed up as George. I'm as fed up as everybody. Stop putting these people through the mill. Stop talking around them. Let them get this resolved in good faith. And let's move on.
Okay. Additional public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items?
Yes, good evening. Larry Dorsey from the Superior Historical Commission, 940 Riverbend Street in Superior. My purpose for speaking tonight is to talk about some historical perspective about the house at 122 East Cold Creek Drive. According to the records published in our architectural survey, which came out in 2003, the Historical Commission conducted, the house was built in 1910. It was moved to its present site in 1939 after suffering damage in the 1938 Cold Creek flood. The Red Cross helped Violet move her house over to this current site. It was owned by Jip and Violet Benelli. They raised their family in the home. In fact, Louise Bennett was born in the house. After Jip Benelli died, Violet remarried and took the name Gardner. So sometimes you see it referred to as Violet Gardner's house. The Historical Commission feels that this humble house nicely reflects the lifestyle of many of the residents of Superior at that time. The house has been a part of the town's history since almost its earliest days, and as has the family associated with it. That architectural survey I mentioned surveyed 32 houses, put them into 3 categories. One of the categories was buildings contributing to a potential local history district. This would be the middle category. There was a higher category. There's a whole variety of criterion connected with that, which I can't go into at this point. So this makes it, this makes the house significant in its, as a result of this evaluation. The house of Violet Benelli Gardner has long served an important role in the history of Superior. Violet graced the meetings of the commission until health issues prevented her from attending. The Historical Commission hopes that any solution to the tap issue, now in question between the Bennetts, the town, and the trustees, can be done in such a way as to not lead to the destruction of the house. In conclusion, that's my main point. We want to see the house somehow stay there as a representation of a certain time period in Superior history. I do want to emphasize that the Historical Commission is neutral on the issue of the tap. It has no position for or against the stand of any of the parties in the issue. We simply feel the building, humble as it may be, would continue to play an important role in the atmosphere of original Superior and do not wish to see it torn down or somehow destroyed.
Very good, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you some questions since you're at the mic?
Yes.
Unrelated.
Okay.
I was reading the Historical Commission meeting notes, so I had 2 questions on them.
All
So
right.
I might as well do it since you're at the podium.
Go right ahead.
So the historic fire bell,
Yes.
where is that, and what's your proposal, what you want to do with that?
The historic fire bell is by the firehouse on Cold Creek Drive. It's disassembled, and it's been lying there outside the office for quite some time. The proposal is that it would be a concrete, what would it be called? Block to set it on. Block's not the right word. But it would be displayed from a concrete base there by the current firehouse, which of course is the site of the town hall back in the old days, and this current building was the replacement town hall, a modern town hall. And so that's our proposal, and have it reassembled, and Martin Toth has begun some of the investigation into how to accomplish that.
Hmm? Very good. I thought that was interesting. And then the other one, what is the historic town boundary sign?
Oh.
I don't know if I know that one.
Well, you probably haven't seen it. It's, George will give you more and more accurate information I can on this, but one time there were 2 signs, one at the west and one at the east side of Superior, that said, "Welcome to Superior." Somebody in town, one of them was destroyed or lost, and the other one was in possession of somebody in town, and they donated it to the town, and we took it and restored it, and it will be put in the ground on the northwest corner of the property, and so it can be seen from Marshall Road. And it's the sign is relatively new. It goes back to, I think, 1976 or something like that. And so it's what it says is, well, Superior, has the town elevation, and founded 1896.
Okay.
So we'll soon have that out.
Great. Thank you very much.
Well, another unrelated thing, too, is that on October 2nd, and unrelated to the previous topics, but it's still related to the Historical Commission, is that on October 2nd, we're going to have a walking tour of Superior. We've had it in the Sentinel and in the Parks and Recreation Bulletin, and 2 of our members who lived in the mine camp are going to lead a walk through the mine camp site and the industrial mine site. And so the museum's open from 10 till 2, and so at 2 o'clock, we're going to convene all the people on the trip and take a walk. Take a walk down to Grassel Park, and then over to the trailhead, onto the trail itself, and then eventually into the open space. We have permission from Boulder County Open Space to go onto the site, and they can talk about the mine camp days. So you're all welcome to come take part in that, too. And we'll even let some people drive down to the trailhead.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Additional comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items? Seeing none, that brings us to item number 6, I guess, presentations, which we don't have any this evening, which then brings us to item number 7, consent agenda. And on the consent agenda is the approval of the minutes for the August 23rd, 2010 Board of Trustees meeting, acceptance of the minutes of the Historical Commission and the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee meetings, preliminary approval of an ordinance adopting the 2010 Model Traffic Code, and consideration of an application for a permit for alcohol on public property. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Yes, Trustee Skumatz, second Trustee Hansen. I just had one quick question about the Model Traffic Code. I assume that the attorney has looked at this and there's nothing, we're not going to read the Model Traffic Code.
Yeah.
At least I have to own up to that. I'm not going to do that.
That's fine. I've read the Model Traffic Code, and the reason this is so lengthy is because there were a lot of typos in the state's version of the Model Traffic Code. We didn't change anything substantive other than the changes you already had.
Oh, good for you.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. So that will be coming back in front of us at the next meeting. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Consent agenda? You're opposed to the consent agenda?
I'm opposed to the minute portion of the consent agenda.
The rest of it?
Fine.
Okay. So, for the record, she's not in favor. So, all in favor, Hanson, Skumatz, Smuckle, Williams, Gregoris, and Pennington, with the exception as we voted. Okay? Thank you very much. That brings us to what was item number D, which is the preliminary approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 3 of the Superior Municipal Code. And Trustee Williams.
Well, I pulled this because I'm not sure this is necessary to change the code when it can be requested by a developer and the board can approve it at its discretion. So that's my only concern about it. Why put it in when we've only had one developer ask for it? Anybody else have a concern?
Mr. Randall, how about, if you wouldn't mind just going over the reason why we're discussing that this evening?
We approved a service plan for the Resolute or Colton Improvement District 2 weeks ago. We'd originally intended or thought that it was going to require an ordinance and was going to schedule it for a preliminary and a subsequent, and then bring this item back at the same time. Reason being, you've approved a service plan that violates your municipal code. This brings it back into compliance by codifying it. It doesn't entitle anybody to get it in the future. It does allow them to ask for it. And that's why we're bringing the codification in. Right now, you have a plan that contradicts your code.
Well, then, when we approved and I'm probably not saying the correct words.
Service plan?
The final development plan for the firehouse, the Rocky Mountain Fire District.
Okay.
We approved a variance, I think it's called a variance, that is beyond the actual property line.
You approved 2 variances and denied a third.
Okay. Does that go against code?
No, because your zoning ordinance in Chapter 16 includes a variance provision. Chapter 3 doesn't.
Well, I've stated my reasons, so I'll leave it at that.
Trustee Pennington?
However, it is common in city government, I believe, to approve exceptions. I mean, that's what Mr. Bennett was putting before us, is to approve an exception based on the merits of his particular case. And when we do that, we don't necessarily then codify those exceptions into the law, do we?
It depends, but in that very case, in March, when the board last took up the Bennett appeal, it was presented with an amendment to the SMD1 rules to allow the board of directors to grant the waiver.
I always recommend that you change your code or your regulations to allow for waivers if you intend to grant waivers, because that establishes legal criteria under which you decide whether to grant the waiver. Therefore, it's not just an arbitrary decision based on, how you're feeling that day or whatever it may be. So I would always recommend that if you want to do variances, that there's variances, exceptions, whatever you want to call them, that we have a procedure in place to do that before we grant such a variance or an exception.
So does that exist now? That waiver, does that exist as we speak?
I'm sorry, the one for the district?
Yes.
No, you all just determined back in March not to change the rules to allow for those waivers or exceptions. I can't remember the exact term that we used.
And it was just to be clear, it was a different request for a different regulation to be changed.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
I guess I'm just thinking in principle, if you grant a variance request or against code, that basically you're then approving it for the future. Is that what you're trying to? You're trying to put it back into compliance in the code, correct?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm following.
Okay, so the fact that we granted a special request, and that is against code, correct?
No.
I'm
We
not-
granted the variance for the fire
Granted the
district.
variance for the fire?
Okay, no, I'm not talking about
Oh,
that.
okay.
I'm talking about.
Sorry, that's where I'm lost.
Sorry, I'm back.
Oh,
What's before us today regarding the Resolute investments, and I don't know exactly the words to put it, but we granted them an exception that is against code. Is that correct?
so the attorney can correct me. So where we are, we approved a service plan that conflicts with our Chapter 3.
Our code.
So that if my understanding is that if we did not change Chapter 3, the service plan would be defunct, or at least that portion of it would become not applicable anymore.
Well, I think what would happen, that's generally correct, I think they would come back and get an amendment to that service plan, which you would then need to approve, just to make sure everything was in proper form. So in that service plan, it said that they were going to be seeking an amendment to the code to bring that service plan into compliance with the code. So it recognized that issue during the service plan approval process. If you didn't make this change to the code, a proper procedure for that district would be to come back to you and say, we want to amend our service plan now because you didn't adopt that change to your code.
So at this point, it's a requirement that we change?
No.
We don't, it's not required for us to change it, but if
No.
you want the service plan to be as it was
approved.
presented,
Right.
then we'd have to.
As presented by Resolute?
Right.
Yes.
It could invalidate that one provision in their service plan if this ordinance modification amendment does not get approved.
Okay, and I think I recall you saying, and I'm sorry it went in one ear and out the other, but why didn't we bring it at the same time?
We originally thought that the Resolute service plan was going to require multiple readings. So our intent,
Okay.
that's why,
Okay.
and since that one got expedited, they should have been on at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, it's just confusing.
I understand. And we deal with special districts so infrequently, so I think that.
Like never.
So,
That's right. Never before, really.
so basically, it's a legality here.
Basically, what this would allow them to do, the service plan that we approved would be in compliance with our code, which means all the aspects of the service plan could be implemented. And the specific portion of the service plan that this addresses is the ability to finance bonds that otherwise could not be financed because our code says it has to be valued against the land. Since the land value right now is essentially zero, they couldn't do any bonding. At least until they build something, and then they could build.
Exactly.
Then they could bond, but that sort of defeats the purpose of it all.
Right.
Trustee Gregorius.
I don't know if all the discussion is coming to an end, but I'd like to make a motion for preliminary approval.
I have if I could, this is a preliminary approval, and so I don't need these questions that I have. I have a couple of them answered this evening, so when it comes back around, if I might. So on page 2, 31-44, that says that we have provided facts sufficient to determine it would be impractical for the land within the district to be included within an existing general improvement district. Did we have that finding? And so that's a question I have. So just to make sure that that's, once again, I don't need to answer this evening. Then item number 9, it has to do with dedications and easements to the county, the school district, or the town. And should these flow directly to the town? I mean, I don't know if any of these things are going to be applicable, but should that flow to the town and the town then grant that to the county and the schools? I think that we've done impact fees or things like that, that we actually then flow to these other organizations. So it's just, once again, a question. And then, did we have a detailed construction phasing showing completion of the basically the infrastructure? That's number 11. And number 12, which is the independent absorption and feasibility study. So I guess I should have read all this prior to that, but, and then 33-1-50, number 2, I've always been, why do we say in the code what the maximum percentage rate? Shouldn't it float somehow? Why do we say 9%? Is that based upon some state statute, or is it just a random number that we've picked because we've picked that, or?
You know, I'll be honest with you, municipalities don't have these regulations. No other municipality has any of these regulations. So
Okay.
I wish I could speak to why they originally were put in here.
Okay, so, and maybe that's the answer, but once again, I don't need to have that.
And maybe, I don't know if Paul has more history on it than I
Sure.
do, but most municipalities don't have regulations governing special districts.
Okay. Number 6 of that section prohibits the acceleration of the principal of any bonds, and I don't know, there's probably a reason why we don't want that to happen, but sort of just off the top of my head, I couldn't think of a reason. And then, what is number 7, a 63-20 corporation? So, I mean, it doesn't apply, so it probably doesn't make any difference, but I guess I should understand exactly what I'm approving. And I think those were my questions. So, just at the next report, if you could go over those, that would be great. So, Trustee DeVries, I think that you move to approve the preliminary reading of the ordinance amending Chapter 3 of the Superior Municipal Code. Is there a second? Anybody? Trustee Hanson? Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number E, which is the adoption of a resolution creating an economic development committee. And Trustee Hanson, that's for you.
Yes. Thank you, Scott, for putting this together for us. I pulled this so that the board could have a little bit more discussion on the format as it sits here. It's a little bit different than what we had proposed at the goal planning meeting, and I just wanted to see if the board was, or approved the way that it is set up now. A couple of the things that I had originally wanted this committee to be, well, first it was going to be a council, and I'm not sure if that means anything the way you set it up. But what was really important was the people who would be on the committee or the council. They'd be key stakeholders within the town. And if we just opened it up to residents to apply to it, we may not get those key stakeholders that are really important. When I say key stakeholders, I mean like the Chamber of Commerce, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, important business owners and leaders in the community. And then, of course, the board of directors would be key stakeholders. I understand why it's set up this way, but is there another way that we can do it? And I just wanted to open it up to the board. Yes.
I'm glad you pulled it, because if you hadn't, I was going to. I was also concerned about the nebulousness of Section 3, and also I feel strongly that residency should be a requirement. So that last sentence troubles me as well. We may differ there, but that's the other thing. In Section 2, I had a really big problem with the word to advise the board on all areas of economic development. That just it seemed like it should be areas that the board, approves or something. And I know de facto that's kind of what happens because we look at their work plan, but just to state that in there would seems much too broad and much too empowering and much too assuming to me. That was a problem. I care about all of the tasks referred by the board. That's fine, but I also, it says to interact with the local business community to help determine local needs. I wanted to make sure that it was understood that they're not exclusively, they don't preempt other people's rights, the board members, to also interact with businesses as we see fit, or as the town staff to interact as they see fit. So those were 3 of the key things that I had issues with. The way it's currently structured, maybe it needs to come back, I'm not sure.
I don't have a problem with it coming back. I like that we're moving forward with it. But the one thing about the residency, some of our key stakeholder business owners here don't live in the town. I think it's important that we allow them the opportunity to be included in this as well.
Doesn't it say that residency is not required?
Right.
Yes, and I just...
For that reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Trustee Skumatz had said that perhaps we should have it as a requirement that you are a resident of the town to be on a committee or the council.
Or maybe the requirement is that you own a business in the town of Superior. With
You
some
have some
vested
vested
interest.
interest in this town.
You have to be a key stakeholder. That was my original premise, is you had to be a key stakeholder of this town in some way or another.
Well, that's not required.
Can that be defined in writing? What does that mean exactly?
Mr. Rendell is raising his hand.
The board ultimately makes the appointment, so you're protecting yourselves from yourselves. Trustee Hansen raises the issue, this would be the only commission that we would allow the second commission that we allow non-residents to serve on because of their vested interest. So the premise was if the board had an applicant or wanted to appoint a particular individual who doesn't live here but has a particular stakeholder interest,
Right.
that they could make that appointment, whereas in most of your commissions, you wouldn't allow it. Council, committee, commissions, we have committees and commissions. We don't have any councils, we don't have any boards. Everything we have is a committee and a commission. That's why I picked that name or phrase. I don't remember what, and then the specific composition. The original proposal that was presented at the board retreat called for 9 members, 2 members of the chamber, 2 members of the board, 2 members of staff, and 3 people at large. There's no business representation in that group unless you're just lucky to get it from your constituency. Staff doesn't need an appointed role on any of your advisory commissions. We have an ad hoc responsibility, and we don't need to be on there. The board has wrestled with the issue of its own members being on any of its advisory boards, and I know that's been a very contentious issue for some of the board members. Candidly, the chamber, it represents an element of the business community, but far from the business community in the town. So if that's who the town chooses to go to pick create its stable and pick its committee, that's great.
Yeah.
But in terms of locking yourself in, and when I say that, the chamber represents 30% of our biggest sales tax generators. Less than 40% of the chamber membership live or operates in Superior. So while it's indicative of what you're looking to accomplish, I don't know that you necessarily want to empower that group to be a significant component of your economic development.
Not
council.
necessarily saying the chamber, but I thought the executive director who's here tonight would play a key role in it, but also the current president.
I just go back to, you gave me 9 members, and you said 2 members from the chamber.
Yeah, okay.
3 residents at large, 2 board members, and 2 staff. I customized that based on what I saw elsewhere in the economic development universe, and we looked at Evans and Fountain and Broomfield and a number of other economic development commissions. I don't know that any of them specified to fill specific roles.
Yeah, I think I got it. One of them was Erie. And I don't know if it specifies that they have to have those people on there, but it does consist of board members.
But again, at the end of the day, you've got this board and its successor boards will decide who the appropriate representation is.
I think in the end, whatever we do, this is a big step forward. So I'm really happy that this is going to happen. But what about the rest of the board? Are we happy with the way that this looks, and can we move forward with it tonight, or should we make some minor modifications to it?
From my perspective, I'm happy with this. I understand Trustee Skumatz's concerns, but I think Mr. Randall has convinced me of why we might want to have that as an availability for someone to be a non-resident on there. And I also agree we're, basically protecting ourselves from ourselves. So I think that we'll probably appoint people from the chamber, maybe multiple people from the chamber as well. And, I don't even know if the president or the director of the chamber wants to do it or has the time to do it. So I don't think that once again, I don't think we should necessarily lock in positions. I guess that would be my perspective. Trustee Pennington.
I'd actually like to see some of the amendments Trustee Skumatz recommended. For example, first bullet under Section 2, to advise the town board in all areas of economic, and I would say in areas of economic development requested by the board. So I do think if other board members feel the same way, that we can either propose those amendments here tonight to it, or we can take this under advisement until the next meeting and view it as a whole and have it resubmitted.
Okay with that.
So merging your comments would have been merging bullet 1 and bullet 4?
Right.
Well-
Advising on areas of economic development as referred by the board.
Yeah.
And I did point one of the cons in the cover memo that you're setting yourself up for a potential dispute there, so that fixes it.
Okay.
And so is anyone concerned about this committee representing the local business community and visiting the local community, business community? Is it under board direction? How would that occur?
I could see this council, after meeting a couple of occasions, setting up a plan to go and meet with all the businesses and see what the current businesses here really need to be successful. So, yeah, they would have to go in.
So my only concern with that would be just liability. I mean, one person can represent themselves one way and another person could represent themselves a different way for the town. And then how could you keep that continuity among all the members?
So I don't think that we necessarily have a liability issue. I mean, the only liability is board action here. So, I mean, anybody can represent whatever they want. So I totally understand where you're coming from, but I don't think that we're going to set ourselves up for any particular issue. Trustees Gomez.
I guess I'm still troubled by the residency thing as well, and maybe if it said something like, you either have to be a resident or run a business that's located in Superior. Something like that, then I would be more comfortable, but I don't.
Sure.
I want some restriction about that.
Okay. Trustee Pennington.
Going back to the third bullet that Deborah referenced, to interact with local business community, I would be more comfortable with language that says to develop a plan to interact.
And maybe it doesn't even show up because it becomes part of their plan, and either we approve it or we don't.
Right.
Maybe it's not even a bullet that exists.
Right.
It either is or isn't part of their plan in a particular year. And the board then approves it or doesn't approve it. It's their work plan.
But I guess I'm all in all a little uncomfortable with piecemealing this.
Yeah,
I hope to make this a very effective board, and I'm not comfortable with the piecemealing of this, and I guess I would like to move. Is it appropriate to move that we table approval of this until the next meeting, which would give us the time to review it and make all amendments?
We can, or we can just have it as, not approve anything tonight and not make any action on it, and have staff direction that understands the discussion this evening. So whatever your pleasure is.
Yeah, it's fine. Let's keep it simple. Get it done.
Okay.
All right.
And I heard 3 edits for the next one. So merging bullets, so 1 and 4, deleting bullet 3, and adding a condition to residency.
Residency or business?
Residency or
business.
business.
Okay.
I'm not sure it was that clear. I mean, I certainly made that suggestion. I didn't see that the board completely agreed with me on everything.
Right.
But, so
I think
I'm not sure it's that cut and dried, but
I agree with you.
thank you.
So
I see general head nodding. That's,
Just, it's not
if people
that
aren't
A
comfortable with that,
I want to
Why
know
don't you speak up
that
now?
the edits that we're looking to make for the next time, so we're not crafting it on the floor 2 weeks from now.
yes. Okay.
I also would like to bring up Chris's point of the involvement of Board of Trustee members in this. It's nonspecific right now, as I see it, so I guess I go to you, Scott, and how did you perceive that? How would we?
If the board wants to choose one of its own to serve as one of its 7 members, you're certainly empowered to do that.
And if,
Or we could do what we do with our
And you
other
also have
committees, so we
liaisons.
just have liaisons.
Yeah.
So it allowed for the appointment of a board member. Chris and I talked about this last week. It allows for the appointment of a board member. The board could assume the function, and all 7 of you could constitute the EDAC. That's where the board or successor boards will have the flexibility.
But if you're a voting member on that, and the committee or the council decides on a direction they want to go, and you've got to vote on it, then is that a problem?
You have it on RCAC, you have it on OSAC, you've had it on Plan Commission, so.
there's long precedent.
I do feel that board members need to be represented in a voting capacity on this. And I'm not typically a believer in board members in a voting capacity on advisory committees. If others agree with me that they would like to see that, I then would question the sufficiency of 7 members, because the representation needed to, on something as broad-purposed as an Economic Development Council, I would go back probably to Chris's original recommendation of 9 members. Again, I'm uncomfortable with the piecemealing here.
I think it's,
Trustees comments?
I think, I look at it as just editing, not piecemealing,
I
but,
do too,
yeah,
actually.
so
I look at
I
more
guess.
as editing and-
But, I have long wanted the board to be very active on this committee. That's the way I originally proposed the actions that are described in here, so
So how do you feel about 7 members?
I could go 7 or 9, I'm fine with 9.
Yeah, the way I see it is that we could go back and forth on how this should be set up. I just want to get it set up, and that this thing's going to take a life of its own on once it goes. And this board, or this council could create something whole new in a year from now and recommend different direction to go.
Right.
So I say we just do it and not make it difficult.
I think sometimes we have a hard time getting 9 people to attend a committee meeting, so I might recommend to the board that we stay at 7, and then if we have people coming out of the woodwork that just have to be on the committee, it's no problem for us to change the resolution enabling this committee, so.
And
or
in the end, the
commission or
board
whatever it
members
is.
are going to be voting on what they recommend anyway, so we will have a say in what happens.
I want to see board members on it.
Then we should appoint them. Okay. Mr. Randall, do your best.
Okay.
G, which is an adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Land Construction, Inc. for landscape improvements at U.S. Highway 36 and McCaslin Boulevard. Mr. Randall?
It, again, was pulled from the consent. The board had looked at the conceptual plans. They'd asked for a couple of additional photo simulations showing both a single tree formation and a double tree formation. That's been attached. The most significant is after the board's saying that they wanted to proceed with the more minimal of the plan, we've proceeded. We've had multiple bids. Actually, there were 6 qualified bids, one incomplete bid. We're recommending award to Land Construction, Inc. at a total cost of $34,782. You may recall that there was $40,000 budgeted for this project. As a result, some of the existing trees, those that are worth salvaging, it is being recommended that they be relocated. But we're talking about the placement of 58 new trees, 95 shrubs, 51 evergreens, and 385 perennials.
Thank you, Trustee Williams.
So I pulled this basically because I'm a penny pincher. No, and I would prefer that we wait for the direction of the northeast loop or the double left on Highway 36 and McCaslin interchange. We've waited this long. I don't see any reason why, we have to do it now. I don't think there's any difference waiting longer to see what transpires in those negotiations. Based on what I saw here, I thought, one of them was overkill with the trees. I thought it was a little too much. Looked to me like you couldn't see the Superior Marketplace from the highway. So I don't really see any reason to spend $40,000 right now. I mean, I don't think it's a pressing thing. I don't think it's a necessary thing. I think it's aesthetics, and most interchanges aren't exactly that pretty anyway. I think we have already some what look like annuals and little flower bed or whatever on the hill, and for now I think that's sufficient.
Okay. Let's see, just one comment and then questions for the board. So my only comment is that if we wait till the northwest loop or the double left turns, Louisville will do, I think, most everything in its power to have that 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So it's been sitting there for years, looking the way it is. It looks
Yep.
fine,
Right. Completely valid point, absolutely.
and I just don't see spending 40 grand on it. That's my opinion.
Okay.
So,
Questions or other comments from the board? Well, I'll take well, I had one question. So what trees are being moved to Town 9 and where are they going? Is it the evergreens? Is that what's happening?
If you look at the southwest quadrant and the existing photo, you can see the real sparse trees that
Yeah.
exist there.
So those, the viable trees would be moved in a location that would be consistent with whatever might happen
Correct.
at Town 9 without precluding anything from that occurring. All right. Well, nobody else has any comments. I think this looks fantastic. I think our current interchange looks atrocious.
Sparse.
Sparse. Very politically correct.
any different from any other interchange?
Yep, some. And the communities that I think spend a significant amount of time thinking about economic development and want their communities to look good, and they want them to enter there. And I think this is, I don't like spending unnecessary money, but I think that this is, it's beautification. I think it makes the town look good, and I think it's economic development. And like we plant flowers in our other parts of the community, now it's a lot of money that we do there. I think that has significant positive upside for property value. So I totally understand where Trustee Williams is coming from. I just happen to disagree with that. Trustee Pennington?
Warranties. Could you review the warranty provisions?
What? Welcome, Director Dominguez.
Juanita Dominguez, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. There is a 2-year warranty once we accept the plant material.
Can I ask a question? Do you anticipate, we talked about the mag chloride and the salt, et cetera, on the snow removal contract. And of course, when these are plowed, that is going to go into this bed. So what kind of kill do we expect from that?
I don't expect any kill. The trees are far in enough that they're not as close to the road as some of the other trees that you might see some of that kill from.
I'm just looking
But
at...
it was designed so that they sit in a little bit.
I'm looking at the simulation here, and they seem somewhat close in this simulation to the street. I just hope we take that into account when we're looking at distances.
And we have.
Okay.
Okay. Additional questions or comments?
Just
Trustee Gross?
one brief comment. I agree with the mayor on this, but I would not want to spend $40,000 and have trees dying and being replaced and have the 2-year period, the warranty period end, and then we're stuck with what other parts of town look like.
Missing teeth?
Yeah, missing teeth, basically. That's what I envision. So overall, I like it. I will vote in favor of it. But we just want to make sure that they are far away from the road.
Just another thing to consider, these are deciduous trees, and a lot of the times what you'll see is we'll have problems with our evergreen trees with the salt and the water and the mag chloride. So these are deciduous trees, so it's a little bit different as well.
Okay.
And can I just throw out one
Trustee
thing?
Williams?
If you all are going to consider this, I hope that you consider the minimal and not the maximum as far as these 2 different layouts that I'm seeing. One has like double trees on the loop, and then also off to the side, there's another one that just has a single row of trees. I would hope that you would consider the minimal.
Is it the same price for either one?
I assume it's the same price. It's just the layout, correct?
L1, if you look at your landscape plan, L1, that is what the companies bid on. It's $40,000. The single layer of trees was, the simulation was done at a request of the board, not necessarily saying that that's what would be done, but as far as what the intention of the contract is, it's the double layer.
So can I make sure I understand this? Option B is actually what's been estimated?
No. Landscape plan, sheet number L1.
Is that the first one?
It's the one that has
It's
the
not a
plant
photo,
list on
it's
it.
Yeah,
It's a drawing.
Go
It's
back.
It's
past
a
the
drawing,
resolution.
Farther
and
back
it's
in the
in the contract.
Yeah, I get confused. Thanks, Mr.
Oh, I'm
Can you show that to us?
wave it in the air, Juanita.
Keep going.
Sure.
Pass the picture.
Oh, you put the,
Be nice to see what we're doing.
Is that in any way the picture that's depicted here?
This is it.
this is the concept, this is what the contract entails.
And the mountains are up, right?
Yes, up and to the left.
Okay. I was just trying to make sure they didn't block the view of the mountains. That was kind of what I was coming from. Thanks.
So I'm very confused. What are the pictures, the pretty pictures we're looking at on the first page? The photo sims of what?
Is that- Didn't we request them to give us photos of what it would look like in X number of years?
Yes.
And I think the
The
question is
simu-
then, do either of those relate to L1? Right? Is
Right.
that not our
Yes.
question?
Right,
Yeah,
what's the
good question.
tie-in?
One's called D and one's called D. Do either of them equal L1?
No.
So the purpose of those pictures was what then? That's what you're
Informative. The purposes of the additional pictures were at the request of the board. The last time we met, the board asked, what would it look like if we simulated a single row of trees? We had brought that to the board's attention in 2009. That was a question that the board had raised, so we brought those pictures back for the board to look at.
So option B that has what appears, is that double or is that alternating?
No, this is double, but what you're not getting in this one within the contract are the areas to the right. These areas, these here. So the contract includes the double row of trees here. These are existing conditions. The board also asked for existing conditions. What does it look like right now? Well, right now, there's a single row of trees. This is your single row of trees. I know it's difficult to see on the simulation, but on your printouts, that's what a single row of trees would look like, although they are evergreen trees.
And then the next picture? That one?
That one is that's your single row.
It's funny, they're bigger, just on the photo simulation, it's a little hard. They have different color and they're bigger.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, and that was one of the comments that Mr. Lanterman made last time we met. He said, if I brought you a simulation for the single row of trees, of course, it's going to look real pretty, because we make things look really pretty. This is what we've had, didn't want to go back and pay additional fees to have them come up with a different simulation when they already had this. Yes, this is a full-grown, single row of trees, but again, it would take quite a bit for it to get there.
So in photo one, why are those trees in that green? Are we looking at trees that turn purple during the fall, or are they intended to be like plums or whatever that are purple year-round in the first photo?
And this
No,
one?
the other one.
The other one?
No, not that.
No, the middle one.
Oh, the photo.
No, the other one, right?
Right, the green one.
The green one.
Green
The
one.
double
The
green
in the
one.
middle.
Double green.
The middle one. No, there you go.
Sorry about that.
Was that just to show the thickness? I'm confused why those are green.
John Lanterman, I'm president of Studio Urbanista. I'm a licensed landscape architect here in Colorado. At the last meeting, we presented what is basically the first sheet. And there was some discussion saying, what does this really look like? And so what was decided, in order to get to this and to meet the budget, we had done some previous work presenting a number of options. So that was done prior to this sheet that was bid on and that you're now considering tonight. Okay, the next two sheets are work done previously showing different options of configurations, a single row that wrapped around pretty far, then a double row, just to show that option, and also the different design considerations. A single row we're showing with what's called an autumn blaze maple. So you're correct. That is, they do turn bright red in the fall. So that's, we have a little license. We're doing photo simulations, and we try to present things that actually generate discussion. So we can talk about these different variables. So it helps us hone in and come up with a final design solution. So this, what's up on the screen right now, is showing a double row, and it's just showing a slightly smaller scale tree in a double row. We came to the final design through kind of observing it's fairly harsh conditions out there, and in order to, you can see on this lower, the kind of the before the existing conditions, a single row, it really doesn't have any impact. And one thing you want to do, especially when most of the traffic is traveling at high speed, you only have a second, and you're going to interpret a larger mass as having some impact. So that's the reason for going with the double row of trees there. And if you can kind of compare between, the first sheet, what's been bid on, what you're considering tonight, and then the lower left-hand corner of the sheet on the next two sheets, you can kind of see what the photo simulation is representing. It's slightly different, but it's, it was determined that really does give a fairly good description of the options without going to the expense of having us generate a slightly modified photo simulation where we had two that were fairly close. Is that fair?
So can I ask a question? Using this, which is the plan before us, correct? What's this going to look like in the summer? Am I going to see green here?
Yes.
Okay. So how many months of the year am I going to see purple? Red?
Well, fall season, as plants go into dormancy and they lose the chlorophyll, the red will emerge. So that would be
Change of color time. Yeah. So I should generally visualize this as green for the majority of the year.
That's correct.
And that's what we're voting on tonight, correct? The double?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to be clear. No, we're voting. Okay.
And we're not voting on any of the alternate pictures.
No.
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 I'm going to go there. If I tend to prefer purpley reds year-round, so if I like this view and I want the red look, are there options to do that? To me, the play of the red and the green is what adds the visual appeal here, and I'd like to see that year-round rather than just in the month where the leaves change.
There won't be any leaves in the winter, right? I mean, these are deciduous.
Right. Yeah, they're deciduous in the winter. So, but they're going to be green from April to October, red 1 month and gone thereafter, right? So I just raised the issue that I was working under the assumption this whole time that it was going to look this way all the time, not just in the 1 month change. So again, from a design perspective, is there a tree that would work for you that would accomplish this?
We can.
Mike, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
John Lanterman, Studio Urbanista. What I'd like to do there, it's a little more complicated than that because you really have to consider the site and the winds. There are a lot of winds that blow there, and desiccation, and just that. There are a couple trees that come to mind. One is smaller in scale and wouldn't really, grow to the mature size, that would have kind of that purplish red leaf. And there's another tree that comes to mind that is larger, but we chose a tree that's pretty hardy and would do well in these conditions. I think we chose the best tree. I could do some research and, given the direction, you'd prefer a red tree.
Or at least one of the rows, the 4-row being the shorter red one, the back row being the taller green one. I happen to like red impact. I don't mean to micromanage your design here, but when I saw this, that's the assumption I was working under as what my eye would see. So I guess that's sort of where I am on it.
Okay,
So just to remind you, what's before you tonight is the contract that we have here with the existing trees that were part of the entire bid package. Going back and having Studio Urbanista study this additionally will definitely push the project back, and will nullify what we've done here tonight, and we would put out another bid for the next go-round. So, in other words, it would not be until next year.
Other comments or questions from the board? Trustee Skumatz?
It seems like what you're saying, it couldn't be done for the same contract dollars probably anyway, because the trees dollars cost a different dollar amount. I don't have a problem with the green trees, so I was happy with the design as it was. It looks very blank the way it is now. I think the trees would enhance it.
Trustee Williams?
I'm just curious, do autumn blaze maples grow slowly?
Michael.
I'll get this right sooner or later. John Lanterman, again, Studio Urbanista. Autumn blaze maple, it's not a slow grower, but it's not a really fast, aggressive growth like, a cottonwood or something. But it's moderate. It's not going to, you're not going to drive by in 3 or 4 years and go, it looks pretty much the same. I mean, it'll be maturing in, I'd hate to throw out, if it's a foot or 2 feet of growth a year, but it's kind of in the scale. It's medium, fast grower, and maybe a little above that, in kind of a range of slow to fast growing trees. And the other thing to consider there, the faster growing, the weaker limbed and more susceptible to like snow loading and stuff. So we wanted to choose something that's pretty hardy.
Trustee Gross?
Yeah, just briefly, although I'm obviously very interested in the aesthetics of it too, I think given the location, I think sturdiness trumps, the colorful aesthetics to it. So I would be in favor of this the way that it stands.
Okay, additional board comments or questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Skumatz?
I'd like to move Town of Superior Resolution Number R-52, Series 2010, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Land Construction Incorporated for landscape improvements at U.S. Highway 36 and McCaslin Boulevard.
Motion by Trustee Skumatz. Is there a second? Trustee Gurgurus, further discussion? Phyllis?
Sorry.
Gregoris?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Muckle?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Williams?
No.
Okay. That motion carries. So that brings us to item number 8, which is a public hearing for consideration of extending the grace period for the final development plan for the Superior Park Professional Center. With that, I'll open the public hearing. Phyllis, you have proof of publication?
I do.
Very good. Mr. Randall?
Very brief introduction. Some of the board members have been around since this project was originally approved. I hope our note is self-explanatory. A preliminary development plan is valid for 18 months, at which time, if FDP or final development plan has not been submitted, the preliminary development plan may cease. You'll see that this particular development project, which was approved in early 2007, technically did lapse. In April of 2009, the current owner came back, the then present owner came back and asked for an extension, even though it had already expired, and the board said yes. That preliminary plan approval is set to expire at the end of October of this year. As the report indicated, the property has been in bankruptcy. As a result of a negotiated settlement, the property is now owned by Centennial Lending, a representative of which is here. Staff has met with them. They've been very candid. They have no interest in developing the property as a professional office park. They do have intentions of marketing it, aggressively marketing it, significantly reducing the price and getting it back into the marketplace so that it can be built. They think that there's significant value in marketing this with the existing plan approval. It's very similar to the Ethan Allen case that the board wrestled with a few months ago, but because of those extraordinary circumstances, most significantly the fact that they've just received title to the property as a result of the bankruptcy, staff's recommending your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rendell. Is an applicant here that would like to make a presentation?
I'm Kurt Gleibish with Centennial Lending, and you've seen my request, so I don't really have a whole lot more to add. I'm not going to waste a lot of your time. I would like to clarify, we're a credit union service organization, so we work with credit unions primarily in Colorado, Wyoming, and Nebraska to do commercial and or mortgage lending. So we service these all the way through liquidation. This is currently owned by Premier Members Credit Union. There's also 5 other credit unions that funded the loans. So at this point, we'd just like some time to get some benefit of those funds. So we advance them, clearly thinking that at some point the prior owners would do the marketing, get it done properly, and it just didn't happen. So we were 3 years in collection. So for that entire time, we've just now finally taken over the property.
Okay. Questions from the board? Trustee Skumatz?
I think that the newer board members don't really have a sense of what this development looks like. I didn't see that attached in here. As I recall, it's some business buildings going up a hillside.
Yes, there's one, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's one that's 2 stories and one that's 3 stories. For I believe a total of 54,000
square feet.
And the 3-story one is the lower one, so it doesn't.
Correct.
It doesn't exceed the.
Yes, my understanding is it went through the approval process. One of the big points of contention was that it not exceed the height of the ridge. Right. So.
And my recollection is it also had a fair bit of parking space around the buildings.
Correct. So, like I say, at this point, we just feel that there's benefit to us in having this approval in place, having this extension to try and market the property so that really we have an opportunity to take advantage of the funds that we advanced with the loan and to try and get marketed as quickly as possible in what's clearly a challenging environment. But at least it gives us a leg up. So hopefully someone will purchase it, develop it for the town. It's better for you, better for us.
Okay. Trustee Skumatz, do you
I
have
just
more?
had, and the last thing was, as I recall, it was marketed or described as kind of medical in orientation.
It was medical office space, although I think theoretically you could turn it into any type of office space. So.
Other questions?
Okay.
Any questions or comments from the public regarding this matter?
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Williams?
So there is no final development plan, correct, right?
Right.
Not yet.
The board will be presented with a final development plan, assuming that it is consistent with the preliminary. If it's radically different, then a new owner or a new application would need to start from scratch.
And so let's say I would like to see the parking lot, the parking spaces to be less. Is that significant?
No. Or a parking structure or parking under the buildings instead of surface or.
If it didn't change the height.
Right.
Height would be?
Height would certainly be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Larger buildings, more buildings. greater lot coverage, all of those things would
Or
necessitate.
less.
Well, recognizing that the building was, the project on 5.9 acres calls for two buildings, 130, 124, it's conceivable somebody could come in and build phase one and never, with no intention of ever proceeding with building two, or vice versa.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Trustee Gregorez?
Unless there's any other discussion.
I didn't see any public comments. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, close the
I
public
would
hearing.
like to make a motion to adopt Town of Superior Resolution Number R-53.
53.
Series 2010, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an extension for Superior Park Professional Center to submit a final development.
Motion by Trustee Gregorez, second Trustee Skumatz, discussion. I am going to surprise people. I'm going to vote against this. It's been one extension, and this is another one. It seems like a lot of extensions. I feel you're paying for you, but I'm not sure that this is actually going to expedite anything in particular, given the office environment. So, and I would like to have, future boards look at this again. So that's the reason I'm voting against it. But with that, all in favor? Trustee Hanson, Trustee Gregorez, Trustee Williams, Trustee Pennington, opposed. Skumatz and Muckle, that carries. Thank you. All right. That brings us to item number 9, which is an executive session to hold a conference, with the town attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to